Our boy was in a situation where he was standing before some judges, and a beautiful girl was impressed by his acting skills. She asked if he had graduated from a university theater program or studied abroad, but he replied that he had learned acting on his own. Another judge, surprised by his impressive performance, remarked that it was not the acting of an amateur. For our boy, however, it had not been that difficult. He then began to leave and requested that they not use his performance in broadcasts. He warned them that if they did, he would sue them, leaving the judges dumbfounded. The girl thought that it was a complete lie for him to be self-taught. Another judge realized that if he entered the jungle of the entertainment industry, he would become a monster. Our MC, whose name was Wu Jin, had been standing outside embarrassed because when they had suddenly asked him to act, that black square had appeared before him. A day earlier, before all that had happened, Wu Jin's head was dizzy because he had drunk too much the previous night. He could only remember up to the second round, when he had thrown his resignation at that toad of a CEO and celebrated his resignation with his friends. Wu Jin realized he was in deep trouble. Then his phone started ringing, and when he picked it up, it was Young Dae asking if he had made it home safely. Wu Jin's memory was completely blank. Young Dae reminded him that he had disappeared for about 30 minutes while drinking the previous night. Wu Jin asked why Young Dae had called. Young Dae reminded Wu Jin that they had agreed to go to Super Actor preliminary audition together. Wu Jin was confused, so Young Dae explained that Super Actor was a popular audition reality show by SBC, a major network, aimed at discovering hidden stars. He added that it had gained attention with participants ranging from trainees to ordinary people eager to showcase their talents. Wu Jin said that Young Dae used to say acting was just a hobby, and now he wanted to make a career out of it. Young Dae told him to shut up and explained that he had asked him to come because he had passed the first round. Wu Jin said he had lost all his memory, so he was not really feeling it. Young Dae was nervous and asked Wu Jin to just give him some support and said he will treat him to samgyeopsal and soju as much as he wanted after it was over. Wu Jin thanked him, but Young Dae was angry with his response. Then Young Dae informed him one of the judges is Hong Haiyun. When Wu Jin heard her name, on the next day he was blushing and had arrived there. More than half of the seats were filled. He was excited to see the top goddess. Wu Jin suggested to Young Dae that they sit over there. Young Dae was trembling with nervousness, and Wu Jin asked him why he would be nervous since he had even performed for free at an acting club. A few minutes later, Young Dae looked like a mummy in trouble and needed to go to the toilet badly. Wu Jin told him to hurry up and go to the washroom. Young Dae left from there, saying that if his name was called, they should contact him immediately. Wu Jin laughed and wondered if he would make it back in 3 minutes, but 10 minutes passed. Panicked, Wu Jin wondered if something had happened, why he was taking so long, and what would happen if they called his name. At that perfect time, the announcer called them both. As he tried to leave, saying he must have heard it wrong, the announcer again called them. He wondered if Young Dae had fallen into the washroom or something. Then Wu Jin apologized to the announcer, saying his friend Young Dae had just gone to the washroom and he would go get him right away. The announcer said his friend was up first, so they couldn't wait long, and he'd be disqualified if he didn't come quickly. It was a shame to get disqualified like that, so Wu Jin asked him for a little more time. The announcer started talking to someone on his microphone, and then smiled evilly. He guided him, saying that it was fine if Young Dae arrived late. As Wu Jin opened the door, the judges were before him. Wu Jin nervously stood there as the announcer told him the first round of auditions was being filmed, so he requested him to wait, and they would guide him shortly. But Wu Jin was amazed to see Haiyun there, and thought she really had a stunning appearance. Then a man handed him a script, saying today's assignment was improvisational acting. When he looked at the script, a strange black square appeared next to it. He was curious and poked it with his finger. As his whole body started glowing, he was sucked into it. As he slowly opened his eyes, he looked around and was surrounded by darkness. Suddenly, a new script appeared before him. The script title was Unknown of Grade F. The script was approximately 10% readable. Grabbing the script, he wondered, could this be the script he received earlier? As some new words appeared on the page, he touched the option Frightened Man. The black square had completed preparation, and he had only implemented about 10%. As Wu Jin heard that voice, he started asking, "Is anyone here?" As the reading began, the whole place transformed into a red forest. Looking around, Wu Jin wondered, is this a dream? He realized that it felt too vivid to be a dream. Suddenly, he sensed danger and started running as fast as possible. He had to run without stopping, but he wondered why he was running right now. Then he realized he was being chased. Suddenly, a man appeared behind him, telling him to stop running. His foot got stuck in a root, and he fell down. The man started approaching. He was crying and begging him to spare him. Suddenly, Wu Jin was shocked as the man stabbed him with a knife. The man was laughing at him as Wu Jin was brutally tortured. In the real world, he was screaming loudly as he fell to the ground in front of the judges. They were all surprised by his acting, but none more so than Haiyun. As Wu Jin lay on the ground, he wondered what he had just done. He was embarrassed, having unintentionally revealed his experience from the black square, and decided to run away as if it were nothing. With eyes filled with sparkle, Haiyun asked where he had learned to act. Internally screaming at how beautiful Haiyun was, Wu Jin kept a straight face because he needed to deal with his embarrassment first. Acting tough and putting on a brave face, he replied no, he had learned acting on his own. Surprised, one of the judges asked then, how did he perform so well? Woojin replied it wasn't that difficult, thinking let's not emphasize his embarrassment just because he was also feeling embarrassed. As he left, saying if they used his performance from broadcasts, he would sue them, they were left confused. They thought he acted impressively after briefly looking at the script. Haiyun said his claim of being self-taught was a complete lie, and so, the snowball of misunderstanding began to roll with only Woojin unaware. Outside, he met with Youngdae, who had succeeded in his toilet trip. Woojin asked if he had done well in the preliminaries, but Youngdae had been taken out in 15 seconds. Youngdae asked if Woojin had gone in instead of him because the judges were asking him about Woojin. Woojin had a sudden surge of embarrassment and told him it was nothing special. Seeing the script with Youngdae, Woojin asked to give it to him. As Youngdae handed him the script, the black square appeared. At that moment, Woojin was sure that if he touched it, he would get sucked into a strange space again. He read through it, and indeed, it felt just like the experience he had in the mountains. Now, he was certain he had chosen Frightened Man or something similar. He needed to check a few things, so he asked Youngdae if he had any scripts at his place. Youngdae replied that he did and asked, but why all of a sudden? Woojin told him that the smell was bad and opened a window to get some fresh air in. Youngdae commented that the guy who out of nowhere wanted to come to his house sure complained a lot. Searching through the house, Youngdae asked why he was suddenly asking for scripts. He added that for someone who usually doesn't watch TV, Woojin needed to check something. As Woojin expected, he found 2 scripts from aired network dramas. As he saw the black square next to these scripts as well, he had finished checking the first one. He decided to check the time on the second one. As he touched the black square, telling Youngdae to watch him closely, he again appeared in that subspace as he looked at the white square. It seemed to Woojin like the number kept increasing as he acquired new scripts or screenplays. As he decided to get out, he realized he was stuck there. Then he started shouting various words, and in the end, when he shouted exit, he was in the real world. Youngdae was confused by his actions. He was there for about 5 minutes, but the time hadn't changed. Then Youngdae's smartphone started ringing. He was talking on the smartphone and whispered to Woojin that the super actor PD was asking to speak with him. Woojin's forgotten shame was rising again. First, he lowered his voice and said yes. She told him they were contacting him because he came with a friend, but ended up passing. Then she asked if he had any plans to come to Super Actor again. Woojin wondered if they were trying to make a fool out of him, showing off and acting tough. He replied that he didn't want to go, and it was just something to pass the time anyway. Laughing awkwardly, she wondered then if he did it seriously, just how good would it be? She asked if he wasn't being a bit too honest. Woojin replied, what can he do if it's the truth? And told her she could forget about it. In his mind, he was begging her to forget about it. She thought if the broadcast aired on TV, he'd become famous right away. She decided to discard his audition footage. Woojin asked if he could get the footage of the scene where he acted. She agreed and told him to send her his number. He thanked her, and she hung up the call. As one of the judges suddenly appeared, she got scared, and he asked if that was the same guy from earlier. She told him that it was right, but he said he had just done it for fun and wouldn't come back for a second round. An idea came to his mind, and Manhwa asked if she had gotten his number. On the other side, tired Woojin lay on the bed. He still had a few things to check at Kim Youngdae's place. Due to a sudden phone call, Kim Youngdae caused a fuss, so he left. However, he discovered some critical details. If he was pulled into the black square, time in the real world paused. People around him couldn't see the black square he could see, and the word to escape that strange space was exit. Since he had confirmed the important details about that strange square, he decided to finish up what he was doing earlier. Elegant First Daughter and Thug Prosecutor are dramas that have finished airing. He decided to see 2 book scripts and 1 screenplay. Since he couldn't take a phone into that bizarre space, first he checked the ratings and basic details. The first one was rated 7.1%, and the second one was 2.7%. He was done with a basic check, so he went in to confirm it. As expected, he saw another one had been added. They were graded E and C. He was confused by the means of the grades. It didn't seem to Woojin to be about quality. Perhaps, he thought, it might be a measure of popularity or performance. He was surprised as he checked out an unproduced screenplay, and it was graded B. A B grade was the highest rating among what he had seen so far. Earlier, Kim Youngdae had definitely said it was an unproduced screenplay. He exited from that subspace. Now, he knew it was possible to confirm the grade of a work even before production. As he started by reading the content of the scripts that had already aired, his smartphone began ringing and his performance video, which he thought was filled with embarrassment, was sent. Still, he needed to check the evidence right after first entering the bizarre space. He felt like he was going to vomit as he pressed the play button. The video started, and he was screaming painfully in the video. On the other side, the same video was playing, and a girl, surprised by his acting, watched it and asked if they had ever actually been stabbed with a knife. He told writer Park Yoonmi to look at that absurd expressiveness and asked, when she watched, if a character didn't come to mind. She remembered the role of behavioral analysis in creating a sociopath character. Yoonmi was worried because it was a very challenging role, and she couldn't find an actor who could portray it. However, she wanted to see Woo Jin's acting with her own eyes first. On the other side, as Woo Jin watched that video, it was better than expected. He realized his first-round success wasn't just a bluff. He had actually passed because of his acting. He imagined himself with a poker face telling them it wasn't that difficult because he was a genius. And the judges, shocked, had said, "Is this a participant for real?" Embarrassed, he realized what he had done back then. Woo Jin thought they wouldn't see him again, so it didn't matter much to him, and he decided to finish the bizarre space experiment. There might still be features he didn't know about. Still, he really didn't want to suddenly get stabbed and die. The next morning, dark circles were under his eyes. Unlike the first time, his mind was less foggy. He remembered every single line of dialogue from the characters in the script, even the cafe male clerk he just read for. Not just the lines, but the character's 5 senses, emotions, everything seeped into him. Imagining himself with this level of skill, he seriously considered becoming an actor. It seemed to Woo Jin like he got to live another interesting life. Then an unknown number called him. As he picked up the call, it was producer Song Manwoo. Woo Jin remembered him, the one with a beard. Manwoo laughed and asked if they could meet as soon as possible. He stuck to the concept for now and told him to tell him the reason first. It was a bit awkward for Manwoo to discuss this over the phone. If possible, he preferred to talk in person. Woo Jin told him they could meet at 4 p.m. as it was the only time he could make. Manwoo told him a few other people involved were expected to come and sent him the address. Woo Jin agreed and Manwoo thanked him. Worried, Woo Jin wondered why he was asking to meet. According to Kim Young-dae, he heard they were a big shot. He looked up how famous they were. As he checked the entertainment news, he was surprised because they were really famous. He wondered why they wanted to meet with him. He hoped that was not to ask him to act or something like that again. As he stood there worried, he was right. Getting straight to the point. Manwoo said yesterday Woo Jin showed them acting that wasn't focused on dialogue. He was curious about his monologue performance. As everyone eagerly stared at him, he became extremely nervous, wondering what kind of nonsense this was. He had a feeling, but they were really making him act. Internally, he was panicking because he only started acting yesterday. He just kept his mouth shut. Manwoo said he could do it by looking at the tablet and interpret it however he preferred. He realized the black square doesn't appear here. Without that, he couldn't get into the space. He guessed he could only use paper scripts. But there was nothing like that around. If he couldn't access the empty space, his acting skills were going to be exposed as a lie. Desperately, he cursed them and wondered what he should do now. Woo Jin thought that if he couldn't do that, his acting skills would be framed as fake. But then again, he wondered if it mattered and whether it was necessary to risk his life for concept acting. Woo Jin started his acting by saying today, and they were all intensely watching him. He continued by adding that he had been walking down the street and thought internally that he was just a commoner who knew nothing about acting. Woo Jin wondered if he should just be honest. He further said, while acting before them, that suddenly a cat had lunged towards him. Confused, they thought his acting was trash. Woo Jin then muttered some gibberish, and Manwoo thought he was worse than an aspiring actor. It was totally different from yesterday. Haeyeon also thought he was totally different from when he auditioned for Super Actor yesterday. Yoonmi thought a first-year aspiring actor was 100 times better than him. He decided to just do it roughly and go home. It was meaningless. He kept acting tough. Woo Jin told them he was already caught, so they should stop this and let him go now. Manwoo wondered what he was talking about. Then he realized Woo Jin was currently acting like he couldn't act right now and asked why he was acting like he couldn't act. They also realized he was expressing his dissatisfaction to them through acting right now. Confused, Woo Jin also wondered how to act like he couldn't act. Woo Jin thought he had asked them to let him go, but Manwoo started saying weird things. Woo Jin thought, don't tell him that Manwoo came to that conclusion because he's seeing him as some crazy genius. Whatever. He just kept maintaining his concept and replied that it was because they suddenly asked him to act without any explanation. He added that it didn't feel quite pleasant to be treated like this. Manwoo told him to wait and apologized, saying to calm down. Manwoo was too hasty because he wanted to show his acting to everyone. He explained everything and requested that they please sit down and listen. He was relieved when Woo Jin sat down because he couldn't miss such a mighty monster. Straight to the point, he told them they were preparing for a new drama, and he wanted to cast him as an actor for it. First, he processed his words, then was completely confused, wondering if that man was serious. Yoonmi showed him the first part of the script. That was the first time it had been revealed to an outsider. She requested that he choose any role from there and act out that role. Manwoo requested him to please feel free to choose any role and read a few lines from it. Manwoo was confident that if Woo Jin showed his acting, the role had already been decided. However, they did not know how he would act it out. Woo Jin told them he would read it for a moment. Sometime later, they were shocked when he decided to do the role of Assistant Manager Park, the scene with a dog, and it was the sociopath character that she wanted. She thought it was not like it was appointed, but he chose such a difficult role without hesitation. She was confused when he put down the script and asked if he could do it without looking at it. He agreed, and she wondered if he already understood everything from the lines, the stage directions, the emotions, etc. Then, Manwoo said let's start right away. Excitedly, Manwoo was wondering what kind of acting that monster would present them with. Wu Jin had been silent, but suddenly his gaze changed, followed by his aura as well. They were surprised, wondering if he had really managed to understand how to convey emotions in such a short time. Wu Jin said to go first, then looked down. They were shocked when he changed his voice, saying it was dog poop. He returned to the subspace world. He had stepped on dog poop, and the world around him was becoming hazy. What had been ordinary recently had now turned into something resembling a fairy tale. He looked at the dog, which seemed as if it belonged to a world within a dream. Then he felt like he needed to act quickly. He said, "Here he is, son of a bitch." He raised his hand, saying, "He is cute, so squashy," and started touching his nose, which made Wu Jin want to pop him so it splashed all over. Wu Jin broke his skull with his bare hands, and the blood splattered across his face. Then, in the real world, he slowly opened his eyes. They were all surprised, wondering how he resembled the figurative figure so much. It was as if Assistant Manager Park was standing in front of them. Assistant Manager Park was someone Yunmi had agonized over, sweating blood and pulling all-nighters to create. She had thought no one would be able to bring him to life. But actor Kong Wu Jin made all her worries pointless. For someone's acting to overpower the script she wrote, that was something she had never experienced before. Also, she had already written so many scripts that she was sick of it at this point. And she had seen numerous top actors like Hong Hae-yun. However, she had never seen an actor like him before. She definitely couldn't lose him. Wu Jin took a long sigh, realizing that role really sucks. Rather, it was the personality of Assistant Manager Park, and no wonder he had seen such crazy colors. A few minutes ago, Wu Jin was holding the script profiler Hanriang, and he couldn't understand what they had been saying earlier. He needed time to sort out his thoughts. Entering the subspace, he felt relieved, but the situation was still driving him crazy. Wu Jin had learned that they wanted to cast him as an actor in a massive project, so he decided to resolve the matter first. Observing the white square, he reviewed the experience he had gained in the subspace and was shocked to find that it was ranked as Grade A. He questioned whether Grade A was the highest grade or if there were others above it. Regardless, he speculated that the viewer rating for this project would likely be at least twice as high as the Grade C production Thug Prosecutor. Though uncertain, he believed the script would allow him to experiment with grades effectively. He began searching for small roles and eventually found one. Since the main characters at the beginning typically held lead roles or appeared in many scenes, he decided to take on the small role of Assistant Manager Park. Then the subspace began the reading, back to the present. He was curious about how they would evaluate him. When suddenly Yunmi stood up, he was worried. She started walking toward Wu Jin, who thought she was a bit scary and wondered if she was angry. She grabbed his hands and requested him to please take the role of Assistant Manager Park. She smiled and added that it had to be him, Wu Jin. Manhwa thought Writer Park was too excited. How could she recklessly cast someone like that? However, he could understand she must have wanted to seize him. Overwhelmed, Wu Jin was surprised because she had grabbed his hands suddenly. He told her to please let go of his hands first, and she apologized. Anyway, seeing the writer's reaction, he realized the power of that subspace had truly been incredible. Manhwa told Writer Park to calm down because he had a few questions for Wu Jin first. Wu Jin had mentioned he studied acting by himself for Super Actor, so Manhwa asked how long he had been doing it. Internally, Wu Jin said it is only the second day, but he decided to answer vaguely. Acting tough, he replied he wasn't sure, saying it had been a while. Considering his skills, Manhwa thought it's probably been close to, if not more than 10 years. Then he wondered, how come he only showed up now? He asked, where did he self-study? Wu Jin thought that he also didn't know that. Manhwa said there was no way the directors would have left him alone, so he asked if he had studied acting overseas. He thought the scale was getting bigger and wondered if it would be fine like this. Hae-yun asked if there were any circumstances in which he didn't need to answer them. Wu Jin replied that he would do that. Internally, he gave a thumbs up to Hae-yun, saying he had chosen the option of secret circumstances that didn't even exist. He even appeared in Super Actor, so Manhwa wondered, it can't be anything criminal. Then they asked, why did he choose the Assistant Manager Park role? Yunmi was also curious about that too. Wu Jin thought it would be fine to say this much, but they were shocked when he replied because his scene was short. Yunmi thought it might be short, but it was 10 times more difficult to analyze and act out. Also, Manhwa thought anyone would avoid a troublesome role like Assistant Manager Park and wondered if he was a genius or just an oddball. Hae-yun thought he was showing off while pretending he wasn't, thinking that kind of role was too easy for him. Our poor Wu Jin nervously thought, it seems like everyone is having strange thoughts. Whatever, he decided to run away first and said he would think about their offer. Outside, Wu Jin was wondering, no, just what the hell is wrong with that meeting room? Then someone called him. It was Youngdae. As Wu Jin picked up the call, Youngdae told him to meet at night after work, because he had promised to treat him. He also told him to return the script and scenario he borrowed. As he pressed the lift button, Hae-yun called his name, asking, why didn't you accept the casting offer right away? As he looked back, he was amazed by her beauty and internally was excited, thinking, I can't believe Hong Hae-yun is calling my name like that. Wu Jin replied, it was just as I said, I needed more time to think about it. To be honest, he was putting on an arrogant act, so it would be strange if he accepted it without hesitation. Besides, if he accepted it immediately, he thought he would not look cool. She came closer to him and asked, "Are you with an agency?" He thought her beauty was no joke and wondered, did she hear his heart thumping? Then he denied it. She asked, "Why don't you have one?" He just didn't and asked, "Do I need a reason?" She replied, "No, it's not that." And again asked, "Were you actually overseas?" As Wu Jin got silent, she realized she made a mistake. He must have his reasons. She apologized and asked, "How old are you?" Wu Jin was 27. She smiled and said she was 2 years older than him. The door was opening. She farewelled him, saying it would be great to see him again in the project. As the door slowly closed, he was baffled at how he had a conversation with Hong Haiyun. Sometime later in a building, they were watching the previous performance of Wu Jin. A man honestly said that even though he had been looking forward to it after hearing from PD Song, now he was sure. Manhwa felt like Wu Jin went beyond the realm of just embodying a role. He added that he had noticed how Wu Jin switched back to himself right after finishing the scene, as if he could switch effortlessly. He further said that even among exceptionally talented actors, there weren't many who had such technique. He admitted he didn't know whether to call him amazing or crazy. Now Yunmi became more greedy when she saw it. She hadn't seen such great acting and wondered what if he didn't take the role. She added that if it wasn't Wu Jin, who else could satisfy the standard? The blonde told them he had said he'd think it over a bit. He added that there were tons of top stars waiting for a meeting about the casting. He was sure that if they offered a role, those stars would come running. He asked if they really had to consider such an arrogant guy. Manhwa let out a long sigh and replied that he had been like that since the beginning. He added that kids these days called it the "my fucking wayo" attitude. The blonde shouted that even then, Assistant Manager Park wasn't a small role. It was a supporting role. Manhwa thought Wu Jin might just be trying to raise his worth, so he decided to give him time to understand his worth. The blonde mocked him, asking what appearance fee they could possibly give to a nobody like him. He hoped it was just his guess. It was the first time Manhwa had been this desperate, so he was at a loss for words. With a menacing expression, Yunmi just said one thing: "Don't be stingy with money." It was almost a threat to General Manager Lee. Manhwa suggested they should meet Wu Jin's worth. Lee reminded them that they also had to consider their production's position. Considering the potential gossip and rumors, they decided to set the pay above the average and include a confidentiality clause in the contract, slamming the contract on the table, saying this was as far as they would go. Manhwa then decided to call Wu Jin regarding the casting. On the call, he asked Wu Jin if he had thought about it. But Wu Jin remained silent, and Manhwa assumed he was pondering the appearance fees. Since they wanted to finalize the contract, they gave him time to think about it and suggested meeting tomorrow. Wu Jin agreed, and Wu Jin wondered what he was on about. He decided to ask Youngdae about it. Then he was in a restaurant handing over the script to Youngdae. Youngdae hoped he didn't use it as a ramen holder or something. Wu Jin replied he did read it. Wu Jin asked if it was true that the detective agency short film wasn't going into production. Youngdae agreed, saying an investor suddenly agreed to produce it, and they might have an audition for it. Wu Jin asked if it's produced, will it be released in a theater? Youngdae denied it, saying even numerous commercial films fail to make it, let alone a short film. Wu Jin wondered what if it goes well. Youngdae explained it would be winning awards at public exhibitions. So he asked which company is behind Detective Agency. Youngdae sent him a link to the film specialist community, where he could find information. Wu Jin thanked him. He also told Youngdae to imagine he was an unknown actor, and what would he do if he got cast by a tycoon PD or an amazing writer. Youngdae felt strange when he asked him that. In the end, he told him that for such a big project, a lot of actors would be willing to play any role, and such a situation wouldn't even happen. Disappointed, Wu Jin apologized to him in his mind, saying that situation was right in front of him. Wu Jin supposed that the unknown actor was him, so he wondered how much of an appearance fee he would accept. He replied that usually a rookie gets around 30,000 won per episode, but he would even accept just 3,000 won. However, for Wu Jin, 3,000 won was a bit low. The next day, Wu Jin was with Lee, who was acting rudely. Before entering, Lee stopped Wu Jin, saying this matter was almost like a first for him, like today's appearance fee negotiation. Confused, Wu Jin wondered if he was here to negotiate the appearance fee today. He didn't know how much he was expecting, but the amount Wu Jin was going to hear today was above the average. Lee honestly told him he was against it, since it was not good to have a lot of rumors from the beginning. So he was saying this to help him before meeting the PD. Wu Jin realized this guy was unexpectedly kind, and he was worried about him. Because of what Youngdae said, he hoped they'd give him at least more than 3,000 won. Wu Jin thought he shouldn't expect more than that. They arrived there, and Lee told the PD he had brought Mr. Wu Jin. He welcomed him, he showed him the contract, and told him to check it because there were a lot of complicated details in there. But what Manhwa wanted to talk about was the appearance fee they set for him. Looking at the appearance fee, Wu Jin was shocked because it was around 250,000 won per episode. He realized it was 800 times more than 3,000 won. He didn't know if it was pre-tax or post-tax, but it was more than his monthly salary. Taken aback, Wu Jin was frozen. Nervous, Manhwa wondered if he thought it was not enough. So he explained it was usually between 20,000 to 40,000 won per episode. He was a special case in many ways, and it was a shame to treat him like a rookie. The 250,000 won per episode. without separate from the additional fees such as reruns, YouTube, etc. If he appears in the later episodes, he will receive more than 10 million won. Woojin replied he kind of expected that. Internally, he wondered just how much top actors like Hong Hae-yeon receive. Manhwa was sure he will receive tens of millions per episode soon enough. And Woojin thought the thing that he only sees in articles or news would happen to him too. So they asked him, what do you think? It was not insufficient, but he was curious about his current worth. So he asked if he was worth only 250,000 won per episode. Manhwa expected he would feel a little disappointed. He remembered Writer Park. Now he knew that a few pennies aren't important. They must seize him. Lee was shocked when Manhwa offered 350,000 won. They asked, does it sound tempting now? Woojin replied he thinks it's enough. Lee was relieved but now briefly had some time to explain the contract because the entire schedule of Profile Hanryang is mentioned there. He started explaining to him, but Woojin didn't understand anything. He decided to just remember the keywords for now. Manhwa explained that when Profile Hanryang was released, the entire entertainment industry would come to him. So he needed an agency. Manhwa told him he would hand over the first part of the draft script today. He then requested Woojin to please do his best on the role of Assistant Manager Park. He walked out from the lift and couldn't believe it. His casting was confirmed. Woojin wondered if he was really an actor. Excited, he thought people were going to see him on TV now. He wondered if he would get a manager as well. And Youngdae had explained to him an agency had its pros and cons. A large entertainment company offered strong backing, but tended to be stricter, while a smaller agency provided less support but allowed more freedom. He wondered when he would get to choose an agency. Youngdae was suspicious when Woojin asked about agencies. As Woojin was saying he needed to tell his mom and dad, his mom called him. He also added he didn't have to tell their daughter. On the call, she asked if he switched jobs. Woojin told her he thought he was going to become an actor. She went silent when she heard that, then called him her son and asked if he wanted to go to the hospital. 2 days after finalizing the contract for the role of Assistant Manager Park, rumors about Kong Woojin started spreading in the industry as a hidden actor. Because Profiler Hanryang had a significant standing among various domestic production companies and entertainment agencies, starting with the production company C Blue Studio, the rumors began to escalate. Rumors spread across various places, including the media, entertainment companies, production companies, and broadcasting stations. With his name hidden, Kong Woojin was gradually gaining fame in the industry. Of course, our hero Kong Woojin himself was completely unaware of this. He saw the information posted on the film community link sent by Youngdae, but not all of it was verified, so it was hard to blindly trust it. Still, he saw an article about the short film, which seemed credible to him. Also, there were a lot of views and comments on that post. He searched more about director Shin Dong-chun, but there was nothing. All he got was the film company's location and the fact that they specialized in short films. As Youngdae had said to Woojin, the independent, short, and art film scene definitely seemed tough. He was considering giving up on detective agency, but that scenario was too interesting to let go. Besides, while TV dramas can be judged by their ratings, it was considered B-grade, yet he was still really curious about it. He had heard that even top-tier actors start with small projects, so he thought he might try starting with something small like the short film. If there was no spot available, there was nothing he could do about it. For now, his only option was to go directly to the film company. He had finished reading the entire script, and now he had to take care of the drama. He decided to enter the subspace. Suddenly, his smartphone started ringing. Someone was calling him from the name Dukyu. He thought it was his sister, who had probably just heard from mom that he was going to become an actor. He was 100% sure she was calling to make fun of him. He wasn't even going to answer it, but the phone kept ringing. He picked up the call and shouted at her, but then he saw it was a different number. He wondered if she was calling from a friend's phone or something. He answered the call, and it was Hong Hae-yeon calling. Baffled, Woojin thought, the top actress Hong Hae-yeon is calling me directly? Blushing, Woojin tried to stay calm because he needed to maintain the tough act. With a change in character, he showed off and said hello. She replied that it wasn't the reaction she had been expecting. She had heard he had confirmed taking on the role of Assistant Manager Park. She told him that, since it was unexpected, a lot of rumors were circulating among the staff, and everyone was curious. He wondered, did something like that really happen? And replied, is that so? She agreed and told him that at this rate, he was going to be popular at the first script reading. Laughingly, she added that everyone thought it was a famous actor, but when they realized it was someone they had never heard of, it would be interesting to see their reactions. She bade him farewell, saying she would see him at the script reading. He was blushing from her laughter and thanked her for her hard work. She pouted, saying, don't force her to work. She is resting right now, and hung up the call. Our poor Woojin was completely destroyed by her. He thought, the people in the industry definitely react differently compared to family. Mom's first reaction would be asking, do you want to go to the hospital? And he realized his sister would laugh. He decided to find some information on the detective agency. Somewhere in a restaurant, Manhwa called out to Shin Dong-chun. Someone told him he was really late, and Manhwa apologized. Dong-chun was a little bit surprised when Manhwa told him the script meeting for Profile Hanryang had run late as well. He asked how many scripts had been completed. Manhwa answered, about 2 to 3 episodes roughly. Various finalized articles would be published tomorrow. But he asked why Dongchun was eating kimchi with soju, and if he acted miserable, his life would be miserable too. Dongchun replied that his situation really was miserable, so why pretend it wasn't? Manhwa asked if he had completely lost his spirit. Dongchun was someone who was from the same SBC drama department as Manhwa. So Manhwa asked if he had quit SBC just to make such weak excuses. With a dark face, Dongchun was listening as Manhwa said he had heard Dongchun had even found an investor for his movie. So Manhwa asked what the name of the project was. Dongchun answered the title was Detective Agency, and it was a short film. Manhwa had also heard the production cost was estimated to be around 30 million won. Dongchun told him it wasn't finalized yet, and the investor was from the entertainment industry. In exchange for the investment, they wanted them to include a few rookies and have Park Young-hyuk as the male lead. Shocked, Manhwa said even if people saw it positively, Detective Agency would become his cleanup project at best. Then Manhwa asked if he should introduce him to an actor. Dongchun asked if all the actors around him weren't top tier. Manhwa replied just because they were top tier didn't mean they didn't look at independent or short film scripts. But the one he was trying to introduce was someone else. Curious, Dongchun asked who. Manhwa explained he was someone they went through a lot of trouble to cast in their drama, and it was Kong Woo-jin. However, Dongchun said if he was involved in his drama, he'd likely be more focused on it. Manhwa told him he was definitely going to be a big hit, and they should give it a try. Dongchun agreed, saying so much had happened to him over the past 3 years. He was a bit exhausted. The next day, as soon as dawn broke, the entertainment field was on fire. All because of the full-scale promotion of Profiler Hanryang. The articles stirred public curiosity by teasing details until the premiere date. Meanwhile, Park Yoon-mi made it clear by saying this work would feature a truly standout scene-stealer actor. Riding the wave of the public's explosive curiosity and anticipation, the drama title was revealed around lunchtime on the same day. The news quickly spread, and soon it attracted the public's interest. Dongchun was happy because it was the work of a close friend, but he was also a bit envious. Today, manager Park from Go Entertainment was supposed to bring some rookies around 3 p.m., but they didn't arrive. He got up saying they think they're the boss and he should just give up. Suddenly, someone called him. Dongchun looked at him and thought he was tall and looked pretty decent. He must have been one of the newcomers that Go Entertainment was supposed to bring. Dongchun said he was a bit late. He said he'd come at 3. Woo-jin asked if he was talking to him. He replied no, that's not it, and asked where director Park had gone. Dongchun asked while they were waiting for Park if he should watch some of his acting. Dongchun thought the company was famous for having many unremarkable rookies, but his aloofness gave a certain degree of trust. Dongchun asked if he hadn't just come to show his face, and Woo-jin replied he had some performances to show. Dongchun told him the length didn't matter, just show him. Woo-jin started acting, saying it portrayed a sudden event that unfolded while a man named Kim Ryujin was running the agency on his own. One day, a client in his 40s came in and requested confirmation, saying he suspected his wife was having an affair. Kim Ryujin took on the infidelity case and observed the client's wife. As expected, the wife met with another man while her husband was away on a business trip. Kim Ryujin first followed the two, trailing them all the way to a secluded villa deep in Gangwon. From lunchtime into the early afternoon, the two of them spent time together as if they were a couple. But suddenly, the man's head fell into the soup bowl. Seeing the man, the wife called someone, and then a burly man appeared. He dragged the fallen man to a car, and then disappeared to an unknown location. Having only taken on the case, Kim Ryujin was stunned to witness a murder scene. He confirmed that the window of the villa was open and cautiously stepped inside. In the basement, the door to which was left open, a stranger was lying face down on the floor. After confirming that the man was still alive, Kim Ryujin shook him, but upon hearing noise from upstairs, he hid in a corner of the basement where some broken furniture was piled up. And now, Kim Ryujin was a fugitive inside the villa. The atmosphere was unnecessarily intense, requiring top-notch acting to make the villa feel like a hellish nightmare. Moreover, it was heavily focused on sound effects, making auditory presentation extremely important. Dongchun was shocked when Woo-jin finished acting by saying, "That's all for now." Dongchun thought that must have been a challenging performance. It was crazy. It felt like Kim Ryujin had appeared before him. It was a style of acting he had never seen before. Suddenly, a man appeared there with 2 actors, saying, "Director Shin." He was a bit late. He asked who was the person in front. Confused, Dongchun asked if Director Park didn't know him. Woo-jin told him it seemed there had been a misunderstanding. Then he introduced himself as Kong Woo-jin. Now it all made sense to Woo-jin. After reading the story, he had been prepared to be turned away at the door, but he wondered why they acted like they knew him. Woo-jin realized that big guy was the person who was originally supposed to come. Dissatisfied, Director Park asked if they should just stay here. Dongchun replied their appointment was for 3 p.m. Woo-jin felt things might get messy if they stayed any longer, so he told him he would head back. He had come because he was interested in grade B, but it seemed to him it was going to be tough. He looked at the 2 guys and added it was as expected. Both the lead and supporting roles were already decided. He didn't really want to take on anything below a supporting role. Dongchun was desperately calling Woo-jin. Then he felt the name sounded familiar and wondered where he had heard it. After a moment, he remembered Kong Woo-jin was the name Hyunghim had mentioned. He wondered could it be he was that same person? Somewhere in a restaurant. They were gathered to enjoy their meal. Then Manwoo got a call. He picked up the call, saying to Dong Chun he was in a meeting right now. Dong Chun told him the actor he had mentioned yesterday, Kong Woo-jin, with striking features and a cynical aura, and he asked if he had a deep voice. Manwoo also asked how he knew about that. They were shocked when he said an actor named Kong Woo-jin came to see him today. So Manwoo asked what that friend had done when they visited him. He replied they had shown their acting skills. Dong Chun said it was like he perfectly embodied a character he had written, and added no, the way he acted it out was even more vivid. Manwoo replied when someone watches his acting, that's usually how it goes. He didn't know the exact situation either. So he told him he would contact Woo-jin separately. So he told him one thing. Kong Woo-jin showing up to see him out of the blue meant the phoenix had come flying on its own. Dong Chun was surprised when he added if he let that opportunity go, he would regret it. Dong Chun asked if he was really worthy of such high praise from him. Manwoo explained they were both captivated by his acting. Besides, it was not like he had judged him based solely on his acting. He added there's a certain mysterious texture that's unique to him, and he's destined to become a top-notch actor. Manwoo said they had barely managed to cast him in their project, and someone like him had come to Dong Chun personally to showcase his acting. Then, he asked if that didn't mean he had a passion for his work. Dong Chun asked passion for his detective agency. In Manwoo's judgment, he replied yes. Manwoo didn't know how that guy got a hold of his script, but he explained Kong Woo-jin wasn't the type to travel far in search of work. It just clearly showed that Kong Woo-jin liked his detective agency. Manwoo asked if Woo-jin would go through all the trouble if he didn't care for it. Worried, he wondered if Woo-jin cared for his work. Manwoo gave Woo-jin's number, saying that considering Woo-jin went there in person, it should be fine to pass along his number, and told him to contact Woo-jin and schedule a proper meeting. He hung up the phone, thinking Woo-jin went there in person and felt a bit jealous at his age. Then he apologized to them, saying he got an urgent call and told them to continue the conversation. Ha-yeon thought they were talking about Kong Woo-jin and decided to ask about it later. Then she asked Writer Park what she had mentioned wanting to tell them earlier. It was nothing serious, and the clothes Hongstar sent over as samples were too flashy, so Yoonmi told her to tell the stylist to focus on making more casual outfits. Nervous, Ha-yeon replied that their designers got a bit carried away with it and said she would make sure to tell them clearly. Yoonmi also told Ryu Youngmin to adjust his diet before the script reading. Youngmin lightly laughed and replied that maybe he ate a bit too much sashimi when he went fishing and said he would follow it. He asked the director who the actor playing the role of assistant manager Park was, because there were some rumors, but nobody knew anything for sure. He looked at the script and was interacting with assistant manager Park the most. He asked for a hint about their image so he could practice better. Manwoo said it was a surprise and told him everyone would see the actor on the reading day, asking him to hold on for now. Speaking of the script reading, Manwoo requested everyone to listen up because he was wondering if they could turn the script reading into an opportunity to go somewhere nice to get to know each other better. On the other side, Woo-jin had come out from his bath and guessed it was safe to say detective agency was set and the main and supporting roles were confirmed. Both of them were insanely good-looking, and he wondered if there were that many good-looking unknown actors in the industry. He thought the power of a contract was stronger than subspace abilities. It really hit him now that he had just been lucky to join profiler Hanryang. Even though it was a shame Woo-jin had lost detective agency, he couldn't be overly fixated on it. Then someone called him, and it was an unknown number. He wondered why he had been getting so many unknown calls lately. It was an unknown number, so he put on a tough act, and it was Dong Chun, whom he had met. Woo-jin remembered that square-jawed director, but wondered why he was calling at this hour. He asked how he had gotten his number. Dong Chun apologized and said he had gotten his number from Manwoo. Confused, Woo-jin wondered why he was getting involved here. Then Dong Chun requested Woo-jin to meet him again, so he could discuss something regarding detective agency. The next morning, they met at a cafe near Woo-jin's house. Woo-jin arrived at the cafe, and Dong Chun told him to sit over there. Woo-jin was dripping with indifference, and Dong Chun thought there was something different about his presence compared to normal actors. Dong Chun apologized for calling last night, admitting it was still a bit rude of him. Woo-jin replied that it was okay, and asked what he wanted to talk about. Nervously, Dong Chun said it might be sudden, and asked what he thought about his script. Woo-jin was silent, and Dong Chun felt like he was confessing a hidden emotion. Dong Chun melted down when Woo-jin replied that he felt attached to it, and said it was a work of art. It had been a script that was always ignored, and he was truly happy because an actor attached to his work had finally appeared. A tear rolled down his face, and Dong Chun felt like the wounds from being trampled on and ignored all this time were being healed. Wiping his tears, Dong Chun thanked Woo-jin from the bottom of his heart. With a poker face, Woo-jin stood there, completely confused as to why he was crying all of a sudden. Woo-jin silently wondered if the word attached had been the problem. Even though it felt a bit over the top, he thought that if he was putting up a tough act, he should show some manners, so he had used that word. Woo-jin was surprised when, all of a sudden, Dong Chun, the crybaby, asked which aspect of detective agency he was particularly attached to. First, Woo Jin lowered his voice to maintain the act, then began to praise him and calm him down. Astonished, Dong Chun couldn't believe Woo Jin knew so much in such detail, as if he had actually entered the world of detective agency. He thought Woo Jin must have gone through the script dozens of times. As Dong Chun clenched his fist tightly, he thought that just to clean up someone else's mess, he could not throw away an actor so deeply attached to his story. There was nothing else to consider. Woo Jin was confused when Dong Chun said they needed to overturn the table. Then Dong Chun requested Woo Jin to please take on the role of Kim Ryujin, the protagonist of Detective Agency. With a poker face, Woo Jin stood there silently, confused about the situation. While Dong Chun begged him like a puppy, Woo Jin wondered if he had heard that wrong. Dong Chun honestly told him that the film was, in reality, intended for film festivals like Mise en Scene. He explained that the Mise en Scene Short Film Festival was renowned for commercial films like The Godfather or Citizen Kane. Judges were esteemed Korean directors, with occasional top actors serving as honorary judges. The competition was fierce, with many new directors participating, and actors who won often becoming stars. Over 600 films were submitted annually, and making it into the top 40 was like winning the lottery. It was a battleground for serious filmmakers. Evaluation was stringent, focusing primarily on direction and acting. If no work met the standards, the award was withheld. In over 20 years, only about 10 works had won the top prize, making it a significant step towards industry fame. Confused, Woo Jin had never heard of it before. He just pretended to know a bit for now and replied, yes, to some extent. The film festival would be held in 2 months, and Dong Chun was aiming for that. However, the production of Detective Agency wasn't looking very optimistic, and he gave a rough explanation of the history of Detective Agency. Dong Chun decided to cancel all of it and start from scratch, with Woo Jin at the center. Woo Jin thought things were getting out of hand, so he told the director that there was no need to go to such extremes. Dong Chun slammed his fist on the table, saying, "It's not too much." With determination, he said, "Don't worry, he will endure them all," and told Woo Jin to just focus solely on acting. With fire in his eyes, Dong Chun started shouting at Woo Jin, "Let's do it together." Internally, Woo Jin thought stopping him seemed impossible at this point. Grinning, Woo Jin thought that at least the goal had been achieved, and it was not a bad proposal for him. Woo Jin brought his hand forward, saying that he was looking forward to working with him. They shook hands, and he replied, "Him too." Dong Chun's flames again lit up in his eyes before the confused Woo Jin, and he said he would definitely secure both a production company and investors. If it didn't work out, he would find a way to raise the money from his contacts. Woo Jin was truly on his path to becoming an actor. He guessed he needed to study by watching movies or something. Then his ego kicked in as he realized he had replaced the main lead, and though he must have been upset. On the other side, Gu Xiaob angrily slammed his hand on the table, saying, "How dare he go against him? He was the CEO of GGO Entertainment." Gu Xiaob shouted that everything was going smoothly until yesterday. The man explained that he had gotten a call from Blue Vision Films, and suddenly, the director had scrapped everything. Then, Gu Xiaob called Jung Hyuk and told him to pick another script. Jung Hyuk replied that he would choose one. He was a top actor and said, "It is strange. Why would he suddenly change his attitude?" Now that he thought about it, Gu Xiaob wondered if that director, Shin Dong-chun, had cast another actor as the main lead. Maybe an A-list celebrity or someone higher. But that didn't make sense to Gu Xiaob because he thought it was a trash script that had been around for 2 years now. He asked manager Park if he had seen or heard about any other actors. Park replied that there were no other well-known actors. Gu Xiaob thought they were just interviewing for minor roles and asked if there was anything else that stood out. He added that there was no real incentive for a top-tier actor to act in Detective Agency. So Gu Xiaob assumed they chose a B-list actor as a safe bet over Jun Hyuk, who had caused trouble, and that was insulting GGO Entertainment. Gu Xiaob told him to keep a watch on Shin Dong-chun, go around independent and short film production companies, and spread the word. Park was confused by spread the word. So, Gu Xiaob explained to tell them not to put a single penny into Detective Agency, and that if he didn't have money, he wouldn't be able to start the project. He told Jung Hyuk to pick another short film script, and he would support it to stand out better than Detective Agency. He told them to pick something that would win at the Mise en Scene Short Film Festival and make sure Shin Dong-chun hit the ground and regretted it. Haiyun was standing inside her agency, BW Entertainment, and typing on her phone. She had uncovered that Woo Jin was working on a short film with Dong-chun by texting Manhwa, and she was eagerly trying to find the name of the film from Manhwa. Haiyun was overjoyed when she found the film called Detective Agency. Haiyun wondered why Woo Jin would do something like that after getting into a major production, and wanted to see Woo Jin's acting in that short film. She was trying to act like Woo Jin, and was certain he would overshadow all the top actors once he made it big. She had no doubt the same would apply to her as well. She really didn't want to get pushed back. Haiyun entered the room of her agency, and the man there was just about to contact her. Before he could tell her anything, she cut him off and asked for a favor to dig into the current situation of a short film called Detective Agency. Choi Sung asked why she was asking about a short film out of the blue. He joked, asking her not to tell him that when she was about to star in Profiler Hanryang, she was planning to do a short film. She replied that no, She was just a little curious. Choi Sung shouted at her like a scared cat, saying that it meant she was interested. Worriedly, he said that if she was interested in something, she usually worked on it. She told him to even gather the smallest details. He replied that gathering info was not a big deal, but if the script wasn't good enough, it was tough even for him. Hae-yeon refused, saying PD Song must have had a reason, and also that detective agency was Dong-chun's work. Then he playfully asked what he would get in return for helping her. She replied that she had been the one feeding him. He denied it, saying that she hadn't done it on her own though. He suggested renewing the shampoo commercial she had dropped, on the condition that the manager she hated would be replaced. Hae-yeon sighed in frustration, asking how the CEO of an agency could act like that. Choi Sung mocked her, saying the artist was just so unpredictable, and she couldn't argue against him. Choi Sung looked at her, saying he knew her sudden interest was not because of PD Song or Shin Dong-chun. She realized he was quick to catch on. She told him there was a guy named Kong Woo-jin. He asked if he was her new boyfriend. She angrily replied that he was an actor. Hae-yeon quickly explained to him all about Woo-jin. He mentioned Ryder Park was wary of even top stars and asked why she was so desperate. Hae-yeon replied it wasn't about the level of acting, but her obsession with making it perfect. Hae-yeon was startled when he said, so in the end, she is just interested in Kong Woo-jin's acting, and she tried to deny it. Hae-yeon was again startled when he pointed out that she hadn't even read the script of Detective Agency yet. She tried to change the subject by asking how much money they had. Choi Sung realized she was changing the subject, so he asked, but he was confused as she started saying that if not, she would suggest he prepare some, and then started talking about Woo-jin. Choi Sung called her out as she was saying, after reading the script completely, someone would take it away, and he realized she was full of anxiousness. He had worked with Hae-yeon for 10 years, but had never seen her like that. He thought it must mean that the actor, Kong Woo-jin, really caught her attention. He wondered if it was instinct, ambition, or perhaps fear of being overshadowed in acting. He agreed to dig into it, and he was getting curious about what kind of actor Woo-jin was that provoked such a reaction from her. He started quickly checking on his phone, and with his connections, it was easy. Then he explained that it was a project of GGO Entertainment, but director Shin Dong-chun had scrapped everything. Now, they were upset and influencing independent companies. She didn't understand, so he explained that without funding, the production was going to be troublesome. Hae-yeon called him Appa, asking if BW Entertainment wasn't also preparing to start investing. On the other side, Manwoo had suddenly asked Woo-jin to come there, and when he arrived, Manwoo welcomed him, saying there was something he wanted to discuss. Yoonmi also waved her hand at Woo-jin, and he wondered if that was a studio. It seemed more like an apartment building. Manwoo also told him it was basically the same as a regular apartment. Before they got to the main topic, Manwoo asked how he got his hands on the script of Detective Agency. Woo-jin was too tired to explain in detail, but there was no need to lie either, so he just answered vaguely. He said he got it from an acquaintance and asked if it really mattered how he got it. Manwoo denied it, saying it was just a casual question. What he was really curious about was why Woo-jin had chosen Detective Agency in the middle of the drama, as he found it interesting. Woo-jin asked if it was that surprising. Manwoo honestly answered that it was a bit of a gamble. He thought the role of assistant manager Park was considered B-grade and decided to keep it subtle, cool, and vague. Acting unbothered, Woo-jin replied that choosing it had been mostly driven by his instinct. He thought that was a solid answer and wondered if he was a genius. Nervously, Manwoo replied that his sense of humor seemed to be good. He thought instinct, or a good eye for projects, was essential. For an actor, it was a key quality. He wondered if that was really the case, then Detective Agency would definitely succeed. Manwoo asked if it was the instinct that Detective Agency would be a hit. Woo-jin wondered why Manwoo was shocked and thought it was a common word used everywhere. He agreed, saying it would not fail and would be a hit. Yoonmi asked if it wasn't a bit reckless and said she was sure this was the most important time for him though. Nonchalantly, Woo-jin asked if that was so. Yoonmi was shocked, thinking why he was so calm and that there was no other actor like him in this world. Manwoo thought that if someone joined a big project, they would take their time to choose another project. He was surprised by how Woo-jin had chosen a short film script that everyone had ignored. If Detective Agency really turned out to be a hit, Manwoo was sure Woo-jin would grow into a great actor with crazy acting, a different level of quality, confidence, and even acute intuition. Manwoo laughed, saying he would have to consult Woo-jin to choose a script when he started his own production company in the future. Yoonmi excitedly asked what he thought about their profiler Hanryang. Woo-jin said if it was the two of them and asked if it wasn't guaranteed to be a hit. Shocked, Yoonmi explained that drama was risky even with a lot of top actors. Woo-jin still thought profiler Hanryang was displayed as a grade A in the subspace. So Woo-jin said he joined because he thought it was going to be a hit. She blushed, saying maybe that was why people believed in religion. Manwoo calmed Ryder Park down by saying they hadn't called Mr. Woo-jin there to ask him that. Taking out the script, Yoonmi told him they had called her there to give him the official script book of Part 1, and the others would be sent as soon as they were out. Handing over the script to Woo-jin, she thanked him for acting as Park, and since the script had been revised, she requested him to go through it again. Manwoo told Woo-jin the script reading would be done in the MT way. Woo Jin thought it was something where the genius actors sync with each other before the real shooting begins. Manhwa explained script reading was just a formality. It was when actors and the entire staff gathered to have fun. Woo Jin realized he was going to play with celebrities and internally screamed, feeling his life had risen to a grand scale. Manhwa told him it would start on Saturday and last 2 days and 1 night. He asked if Woo Jin would be able to join them, to which Woo Jin agreed. Manhwa advised him to know the script inside out before coming. Before Manhwa could continue, Woo Jin's phone rang. He picked it up and apologized to the director. Manhwa said he should answer it if it was urgent. It was Dong Chun, asking for a meeting to discuss detective agency. Woo Jin agreed, and Manhwa assumed it must be Dong Chun. Manhwa then mentioned the casting for detective agency was finished and asked when the date for his script reading would be. Woo Jin was internally confused, and then replied that currently no one else had been cast except him. Manhwa was surprised and wondered if actress Ha-yeon hadn't contacted them yet, though he was sure Ha-yeon was interested in detective agency. Manhwa decided to arrange things for Woo Jin and asked where the meeting with Dong Chun would take place. Sometime later, Dong Chun had hurriedly borrowed a place and requested Woo Jin to sit. He explained he had looked for film companies and investors, but told him it wasn't easy. Dong Chun assumed it was because of GGO Entertainment. He apologized because the situation didn't look good. Woo Jin thought he resembled him when his draft was rejected for the 6th time. Woo Jin asked if there was something he could help with. Dong Chun told him to just focus on acting and said he would do whatever it took to secure the investment. Dong Chun mentioned leaving out some scenes to attract investors. Woo Jin asked if the quality wouldn't drop as well. Dong Chun apologized and hadn't expected the situation to turn out like this. He anxiously wondered if it would stay as a movie that could never be produced. Then a girl appeared there, removing her mask and asking if he was a director now. It was Ha-yeon, wanting to take part in the detective agency short film. They were surprised when they saw Ha-yeon. Woo Jin looked at her with a poker face, but internally he screamed, wondering how a top actress had come here out of the blue wanting to work on a short film. Ha-yeon was disappointed because Woo Jin was not even surprised and asked if he perhaps expected her to work in the detective agency. Internally, he replied, "Of course not." First, he composed himself and lowered his voice, then replied that he was surprised. She exclaimed he was funny, saying that with no expression at all. Woo Jin wondered how Hong Ha-yeon knew about it and remembered Manhwa. He asked, did Manhwa tell her about it? She agreed, saying she was going to contact him anyway. Woo Jin asked if she was joking about working on the detective agency short film. She pouted, saying that even though she might look like she was playing around, she was serious. Then he coldly said she could do it if she wanted to. It didn't matter. She agreed, saying it was a deal. Dong Chun asked if she was really going to act in detective agency. He apologized because it was hard for him to believe it. She agreed, saying if he was okay with it, she wanted to play the wife role. He told her the wife role was just a supporting role, and the short film would be exhibited at the Short Film Festival. Moreover, it was impossible for him to match her appearance fee. Showing him her credit card, Ha-yeon told him not to worry about investors. She added that he would receive the details if he contacted her CEO. She requested him to maintain secrecy about her appearance in the film until its release. Then, she asked Woo Jin why he chose detective agency. It was the same question again, so he decided to give the same answer and replied it was because of his instinct. She exclaimed that it was ridiculous and asked if he realized he was kind of a freak. He replied that he wasn't sure. She smiled and left from there saying she will know it if she watched him, and let's stay in touch. There was an awkward silence between Woo Jin and Dong Chun. Afterward, Dong Chun began shouting like a mob in a game, but Woo Jin simply ignored him. Woo Jin daydreamed about Ha-yeon asking him to stay in touch, like a friend. Sometime later, Woo Jin lay on his bed, saying he would be working on 2 projects in a row with Ha-yeon. He smugly imagined Youngdae's reaction upon hearing it. Suddenly, he felt motivated and picked up the script, saying he should experience all the roles in Profiler Hanryang. As he grabbed the official script book, a black square appeared next to it, and he entered the subspace. Since the Profiler Hanryang script list had been updated, he could delete the existing ones. He was surprised to see it recognize the draft script and official script as 2 separate things. It added a plus to the A grade, and he wondered if A+ was above grade A. Then above that, would it be A++ or S? Woo Jin realized the quality increased as they made revisions. Since he lacked knowledge in this part, he needed to gain something impressive if he wanted to maintain his tough act among those top actors. His goal was to read through all the characters, and the reading began. On the other side, near a beautiful villa, Dong Chun was making a contract with an old man who asked him what he was planning to use it for. Dong Chun replied that it was for a filming location for a movie. Now, he wanted to share the good news with Woo Jin, but then he remembered that the script reading for Profiler Hanryang was scheduled for that day. Woo Jin stood before the meeting location, thinking there were really a lot of people there. A guard stopped him and asked if he was part of the team. Woo Jin, surprised, inquired whether the guard was asking him. Suddenly, Ha-yeon appeared and told the guard that he was a staff member for Profiler Hanryang. The guard recognized Ha-yeon and then gave them permission to proceed that way. Ha-yeon whispered in his ear, asking him to pretend he didn't know anything for now, and said they were going to surprise them later. She added that he seemed not to care too much about what others thought and asked if those clothes were a bit too comfortable. With a shabby look, he replied that he had just dressed moderately. Since he was learning things, she told him to pay attention to managing his image from now on. Haiyun thought that it wouldn't do and asked Woojin why he was using such a nice visual like that. She mentioned that she would do basic makeup for him and asked him to come with her for a moment. Our poor Woojin was completely lost for words. Sometime later, they entered there, and Haiyun said that it was definitely much better than earlier. Internally, Woojin wondered if this was a dream, that the day had come when Hong Haiyun was personally doing his makeup. Woojin looked at others, noticed that more people were there than he had expected, and then started feeling nervous. He was trying to stay calm, thinking that they were all just the same. While Haiyun was talking with others, Woojin stood there like an invisible man. He decided to hide behind Hong Haiyun to buy some time. Taking deep breaths, he tried to manage his expression. Then, Haiyun started talking with Young Hyuk about the after-party, and Woojin recognized that voice. He thought that Young Min was very handsome, and that the vibe he was giving off was on a totally different level. Then, Young Hyuk asked her if she had seen the actor who plays the role of Manager Park. She chuckled and replied that she didn't think so. Like a mob character, Woojin internally said that the actor was right in front of him. Young Hyuk asked Woojin if he was the manager and complimented him, saying that he looked handsome and his physique was nice too. He then told Haiyun that he was too talented to just be a manager. She joked about whether they should try making him an actor. Woojin was angry, but let it slide since Young Hyuk had called him handsome. He came closer to Woojin's face, saying that he should really try acting, and that his looks were just too good to not make use of. Woojin thought that Young Hyuk's looks were insane. He looked away while saying that this person was so chic, that he had a certain vibe, and wondered if he was nervous. Woojin internally panicked, realizing he had been so distracted by his looks that he forgot to respond. But when Woojin tried to respond, Young Hyuk quickly ran away upon seeing Manwoo and writer Park Yunmi, as he needed to greet them. As Woojin was completely stupefied, Haiyun called him over and pointed to the desk of Assistant Manager Park, telling him to go ahead and sit there. She added that although he might not be nervous, he should try not to get intimidated too. While Woojin was trying to get his mind under control again, Young Hyuk asked the director about Assistant Park, saying that he wasn't there and asked if it could be that he wasn't coming. Manwoo looked at Woojin and asked if he wasn't already there. Confused, Young Hyuk looked back, and everyone was shocked as they looked at Woojin. Then, Young Hyuk realized that the person who was Haiyun's manager was the actor playing Assistant Manager Park. Woojin looked at them and introduced himself, saying he was playing the role of Assistant Manager Park. Everyone had suddenly stared at him, so he had started doing a concept introduction and wondered if that was the right thing to do. The other people exchanged looks, commenting that it was the first time they had seen him, and they realized he was an unknown actor. Manwoo officially announced to everyone that the actor playing Assistant Park was Woojin and started the opening of the first part of the script. Young Hyuk asked him if he didn't usually avoid casting newcomers. From what he saw, he thought his reactions were a bit stiff and told him that his acting might come across as bland. Manwoo told him that he would see for himself and instructed him to just go and take his seat. Young Hyuk agreed, and Manwoo had expected that everyone would have a lot of questions regarding Woojin. In that case, he decided to show them himself, and they started the reading. Woojin was relieved when it finally began. Manwoo started narrating Scene 1. The drama took place in 2010, in the mountains, during the morning. Police officers were swarming and positioned throughout the forest. Among them, Assistant Park was a major character in the first episode. The first scene began with the discovery of a dead body of a man in his SOS on a mountain. Then Young Hyuk started his acting. According to the setting, he was a genius who led a carefree life, so he was known as the Carefree Genius. Next was the female lead, passionate detective Jong Yun-hee, and Haiyun also started her acting. Woojin thought that even though it was just a reading, the intensity was definitely strong. Both the character who had delivered the lines just now and the one who was whispering now seemed to deliver the lines a bit casually. He added that it should be emphasized there. The character was feeling desperate. He wondered why the delivery was so dull. When he had experienced it, it hadn't felt like this. Manwoo told Taesan that the line was a bit flat and suggested adding some emphasis. Yunmi also told him that the character analysis was incorrect and that the energy was so drained. Woojin thought that he was right, that the actor's performance had been off from the start. Woojin may not know the female roles, but the roles he had experienced were all just as he had imagined and thought that he could be compared to the performances of other actors. Woojin was surprised when he realized that reading could be surprisingly enjoyable. As others were acting and saying their lines, Manwoo and Yunmi were correcting them and instructing them how it would be better. Since Park's first appearance was a solo performance without any partner, Manwoo told Woojin to capture the essence moderately. This was just to align the tone for the progression of the play. Woojin agreed, saying that he would keep it moderate, but he wondered what moderate really meant. Woojin wasn't sure. Since he was sitting anyway, he decided to minimize his movements and focus on expressing himself properly. He concentrated solely on the experiences of Assistant Park that he had seen, handled, and felt directly, reducing his movements slightly to achieve a moderate outcome. He had done this reading and experienced it dozens of times, thoroughly understanding and absorbing it. Then, a second Woojin appeared behind him and covered his eyes. Then, with a maniacal smile, Woojin became Assistant Park. He glanced to his right, and everyone was amazed by his acting as they watched him. When Woojin glanced to his left, Haiyun, shocked, wondered if the intensity of his acting had suddenly become much stronger compared to before. With his strange eyes, Woojin looked forward, leaving Young-hyuk completely baffled. Then Woojin opened his mouth and said, "There he is," and added with a creepy smile, "The bastard." Young-hyuk was completely petrified. A drop of sweat rolled down his face as he clenched his teeth, internally exclaiming whether this could really be called moderate acting. He wondered how someone could switch their emotions completely like that. Young-hyuk was trying to control his trembling and wondered how much analysis and practice one would need to achieve that level of acting. He doubted whether it was even possible to achieve that through practice alone. Young-hyuk thought that right now, it was ambiguous to even call him an actor. He was Mr. Park himself, a sociopath with pleasure in sight, just like Mr. Park. Manhwa said that part 1 was over. Then they moved on to part 2 in the interrogation room, where Yoo Ji-hyung and Mr. Park were confronting each other. Young-hyuk was surprised when he saw that Woojin wasn't even looking at the script, and wondered if he thought there was no need to even look at it. He thought that with how Woojin had acted as Manager Park just now, he must have analyzed and memorized the script like crazy. Young-hyuk started acting and saying his lines, but Woojin confidently began saying his lines with great acting. Young-hyuk realized that he really dove into the acting process quickly. While they were both saying their lines, Young-hyuk understood why he was sitting there, and he thought that probably not just he, but everyone there likely understood as well. Young-hyuk wondered how he could be so calm after showing such an impressive performance, and whether that level of acting meant nothing to him. The old man near him called his name, and Young-hyuk looked at him. The old man told him not to lose focus and mentioned that the person had captivated everyone with just one performance, controlling the flow as he pleased. The old man believed that the person was no rookie and must have had a great past. The old man asked where such an outrageous person had come from and advised him to stay focused. Otherwise, Young-hyuk's expression became stiff when the old man asked if he didn't think he would be overshadowed by his acting. A few hours later, the script reading was over. Everyone had worked hard, so they had prepared a lot for the upcoming after-party. Manhwa also told them that if they just wanted to relax, they could comfortably stay in their rooms. Nearby, 2 girls were getting chills from Woojin's acting, as if they were facing Assistant Manager Park. The mood was very heavy, and they wondered if he was trying to recover his emotions at that moment. But Woojin was just hungry and decided to make sure to feast on a lot of meat during the after-party. He saw everyone slowly leaving, and was deciding whether he should get going too or stay behind for a bit longer, when suddenly someone tapped on his shoulder. It was a girl with a microphone introducing herself as part of the making team. She apologized for bothering him when he must be tired, but she wanted to ask him a few questions. Woojin was just as confused by the term making team as we are. Woojin had seen them on YouTube, how they filmed, and he was starting to get nervous again, but he agreed. Like always, Woojin stood there silently, listening with a poker face, as she asked how much analysis and practice it took him to grasp the hidden meanings behind the lines, considering that the role of Assistant Manager Park was quite challenging. Woojin thought he better respond to the question using some professional terminology. If he answered it too vaguely, they might think of him as an amateur. So, he decided to subtly steer the conversation towards social life. Yoonmi was touched when he replied that he just thought the script was great. As the reporter asked him if he was part of some theater troupe or had been honing his acting skills all this time, he became confused, wondering if it was just his imagination or if it felt like everyone was looking at him, as if they were waiting for his answer or something. He thought it must just be his imagination and denied it, saying that he was self-taught. They were confused by his response and fell silent. Then she screamed, asking if he was serious. Woojin was confused, thinking about why they were reacting like that, and he agreed, saying that he was self-taught. The people around him couldn't believe that someone could achieve that quality of acting by self-studying. Young-hyuk, also confused, couldn't believe it, while Haiyun was grinning because of their reactions. They were looking at him intensely, and Woojin had no idea why he felt like the vibe had changed. He wondered if he had come off as a bit arrogant, but he wasn't lying. He felt nervous, so he decided to escape slowly by apologizing and saying that he was not very good at expressing himself. They all watched him confusingly and silently as he left. Haiyun was watching him when a man followed him, asking him to wait. She guessed that the head of BHM Entertainment was there to offer him a contract. Then, suddenly, Choi Song asked her if what he had said earlier was true. She agreed, saying that he probably wouldn't find anything even with his connections in the industry. She added that acting was just a hobby for him, and that he even participated in Super Actor just for fun. Choi Song said that acting isn't just a memorization subject. He asked what about overseas. She replied that his past was unclear, and that he had some kind of situation going on. She then asked what he thought after seeing him in person. He answered that he could see why she was so captivated. Choi Song honestly said that his first impression of him was just average, but it was different now. He explained that the visible acting was smooth and neat, with no sense of dissonance. He wasn't simply mimicking or reading what was written on the page. He had never seen an actor like that, The guy was a monstrous genius. He added that it was something everyone would envy. She told him that all the entertainment companies there were probably drooling over Wu Jin right now. By then, there were probably quite a few entertainment companies that had handed Wu Jin their business cards. She asked if he was just going to sit there like that. He confidently replied that there was no way. He also envied that talent and knew he needed to make a move to get him. Sometime later, at the dinner party, everyone was talking about Wu Jin. Jung Hyuk, hearing them, thought that Kong Wu Jin was an actor of a kind he had never seen before, and he couldn't even gauge his potential. The role of assistant manager Park would be a highlight in anyone's acting career, but he thought about what that self-taught actor had done. Then, Jung Hyuk heard a couple bad-mouthing Wu Jin, saying that as a newcomer, he should at least attend the company dinner, and that he had already become arrogant just because he could act a bit. Jung Hyuk said that in his eyes, Wu Jin was more like a monster than someone who could act a bit. He added that the PD had said attendance at the dinner was optional, and if he was tired, he could skip it. The girl was nervous as Jung Hyuk continued, saying that after bringing out such deep emotions, those feelings couldn't just be cleared up in a few hours. Attending the dinner would be a burden. The old man agreed, saying that Wu Jin probably had to undergo a lot of meditation. Jung Hyuk further added that Wu Jin must be feeling like a mess, and talking to others in such a state would make it difficult for everyone. Then another girl said she had experiences like that too. When emotions run high, she tended to get annoyed at people for no reason. They were both ashamed and looked away as Jung Hyuk continued, saying that Wu Jin was probably trying to recover from his own emotions, and that everyone had experienced the difficulty of emotional recovery. As she tried to argue back, Manhwa appeared. Jung Hyuk looked away from her and asked Manhwa where on earth he had found Wu Jin. She nervously listened as Manhwa replied that he didn't even remember how many times he had been asked that question today. Jung Hyuk was confused, so Manhwa explained that Wu Jin's acting was extraordinary and his past was unclear. He had also looked into it a bit and was leaning toward the possibility of Wu Jin being from overseas. Jung Hyuk asked if that really meant his acting was self-taught. Manhwa replied, true, and that even he could probably sense that Wu Jin himself was an existence that didn't make sense. He was just someone born to act. Jung Hyuk suddenly stood up, saying that was absurd. Manhwa asked him if he was leaving already. Jung Hyuk explained that he couldn't just sit there and enjoy himself. He was going to practice more. The lead couldn't be overshadowed by the supporting role. Everyone got motivated and stood up, saying they should review the script again too. Manhwa thought that Wu Jin had ignited everyone's passion, and the quality of the drama would now rise by several levels. He wondered if Wu Jin knew how much of an impact his presence would have now that he had just revealed himself. On the other hand, as usual, Wu Jin was peacefully dreaming about eating food. He was gloomy because he had slept all day and in the end couldn't eat the beef. He was just trying to make a living by acting and putting up a tough act. Haeyeon noticed that he looked colder than usual and wondered if he hadn't recovered from the emotions of assistant manager Park. She asked him where he lived and said she would drive him home. He thought he would gladly accept it and said that it was on the Suji side. Then, she requested that he please come on in. He was excitedly thinking that it was so sweet of Haeyeon to be escorting him, but when he entered the car, he saw Choi Song there, who asked if they could talk for a moment. Haeyeon introduced him as her company's CEO. Wu Jin realized that he was the one who had invested in the detective agency and wondered if that meant he was like the landlord of a building. He was confused about what was going on internally and replied that he was sure. Choi Song introduced himself as the CEO of BW Entertainment and mentioned that, coincidentally, they already had a connection. Choi Song told him that he knew they had invested in the detective agency and said he was looking forward to working with him on the detective agency. Wu Jin wondered if this was about the detective agency. Choi Song frankly informed him that he knew he didn't have an agency yet and mentioned that he personally wanted to be with him from his starting point as an actor. Wu Jin asked if he was offering a contract. Choi Song agreed, saying that their company was small enough to look like a one-person agency for Hong Haeyeon, but their startups operated on a different level. Choi Song told him that this was a time when he needed focused care rather than a distributed approach and added that the entertainment world was like a jungle. One wrong move, and an actor's career might be blown away. Worried, Wu Jin thought that the entertainment industry was indeed brutal. He wondered how he should respond but decided to answer confidently and said that the jungle sounded great. Surprised, Choi Song thought that he had been trying to warn him about the risks, but Wu Jin was different for sure. He wondered what kind of past Wu Jin had for him to be so firm. Choi Song tried to convince Wu Jin by saying that if he agreed to join them, he would make sure he received detailed and thorough care, and added that he must have received a lot of business cards. Wu Jin agreed. Choi Song asked if they had mentioned the down payment too. Wu Jin thought that no one had mentioned it, but remembered that they did talk about the conditions. He decided to answer vaguely, and said that he thought he had heard some unconventional conditions. Choi Song nervously replied that he would match those conditions, and at least hoped he could hear their conditions as well. Wu Jin felt like things had gone out of hand again, but he knew that if he hesitated, his tough act would fail. He had no choice and told Choi Song that he would think about it and contact him later. Finally, Wu Jin was at home. He was lying on his comfortable bed, and he had expected to receive offers to join an agency someday. Now that the time had come, It had become troublesome because he couldn't choose which one to pick. Since the shooting of Detective Agency would start soon, he decided to think about it after it ended. He needed to experience it first. He entered the subspace, and when he was about to start, he was shocked to see that Profiler Hanriang was now grade S. He was confused as to why it had suddenly increased again. He was sure it was A+ before the script reading. He thought he must have been unaware of something that had happened. Anyway, the script reading for Detective Agency started, and the reading began. Time passed by, and it was the first shoot of Detective Agency. Wu Jin was standing before a villa which looked the same as he had seen while experiencing it in the subspace. Then, one of the staff members asked if he was an actor and told him all the actors were on standby over there. He wondered if they were the actors who would appear in Detective Agency along with him, and he felt a little nervous. He told himself not to forget to act tough. Then 2 actors were talking about the weather, and Wu Jin overheard them and started laughing. One of them asked if he had seen the actor who would play the wife. The other one was a little curious too, and wondered why she wasn't there yet. A girl then told them that the lead actor of Detective Agency was unknown. Wu Jin wondered why they were suddenly talking about him. The other man said that the director was famous and that the project was for the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival, but he doubted it because the lead actor was unknown. The girl said that the investor was likely an entertainment company that had set conditions for the director. Wu Jin, like a mob, thought there were no conditions, though. One of the men was jealous because he also wanted to play a lead role using the investment money. Then another man said the main actor wasn't there yet. Wu Jin thought it was disrespectful and put up a tough act as the monstrous actor who didn't care. He added that they would end up arguing if he openly picked fights or caused harm to them. Then Dongchan arrived and told them the briefing would begin soon. He called the main actor and told him he should get ready too. They were all shocked when Wu Jin got up behind them and said, "Yes, director?" The previous man was worried, thinking Wu Jin was angry. Wu Jin thought it was better to correct what was wrong and told him he was not with any agency. But he thought that it was definitely a warning and tried to apologize. Dongchan was confused and asked if something was wrong. Wu Jin replied that he thought there was a misunderstanding and told him not to worry about it. Behind Wu Jin, someone walked towards him, asking what the misunderstanding was. It was Haiyun. She took off her glasses and asked him to tell her about it too. The previous men were surprised by her appearance. Dongchan introduced Haiyun to them, saying everyone must be surprised, and that she would be playing the wife role. They couldn't believe it. She then said they would meet again and told him that they had been seeing each other quite often. When they heard that, they wondered in shock who the hell he was. Dongchan said that Haiyun's participation would remain a secret until the movie's release due to a confidentiality clause and requested that they keep it a secret. He mentioned that, excluding Haiyun, everyone else would stay at a nearby dorm for 5 days, and if anyone couldn't make it, they should inform the production team in advance. He then said from today they should do their best to stick to the schedule. He told Wu Jin to please get his makeup done by this person. The first scene would be a solo cut, and they were going to start with the cut of him entering the villa first. Wu Jin was starting to get nervous since it was his first shooting. It was even worse because he was the lead actor. While they were doing his makeup, he was thinking. First, he needed to maintain his tough act. He should deceive himself first. Haiyun appeared out of nowhere behind him and said in his ear, "Have you considered it, about our agency?" He replied that he was thinking of joining one after Detective Agency ended. She said then, it meant he hadn't attended any meetings regarding it yet, and asked if he had any conditions in mind. Internally, he thought there was no way he had any, but he replied that he wasn't sure. She told Wu Jin that actors were like a product too. When discussing something with a company, it was better for them to set their own worth. She left, saying he should think about it and tell her later. She wished him good luck with the shooting. He thought she should at least tell him how to set his worth too. He decided to focus on the shooting first. Now, he just needed to pull off the lead role of Detective Agency, Kim Ryujin. He needed to make it more vivid than during the script reading since he needed to move around instead of just sitting. He recalled all the senses he had experienced during the reading in the subspace. This time, he became the main character of Detective Agency, Kim Ryujin. He was excited to see what kind of acting Wu Jin would show in the actual shooting. The shooting began, but Wu Jin suddenly stumbled and fell to the ground. He thought it reminded him of Kim Ryujin's personality traits. Haiyun agreed internally, noting that Kim Ryujin's character was supposed to have a slightly sloppy and clumsy feel to him. Haiyun then silently noticed other actors complimenting Wu Jin. She observed that he not only had the dedication to plan ad-libs to improvise movements, but also the intuition to enhance the character's personality. She thought that with acting that great, he would be fine even without doing something like that. She also wondered if he wasn't just like a cheat code character. Wu Jin, on the other hand, had really tripped by mistake and fallen down, feeling embarrassed. Since he fell down, he was horrified and wondered if the director would give him a sign to stop or if he should wait. But when Wu Jin saw them quiet, he was confused. For now, he decided to continue and see what would happen later. He started focusing again and pulled Kim Ryujin out from him. Kim Ryujin was feeling scared, but he moved forward. The reason Wu Jin was doing the Detective Agency film was because he got a thrill out of seeing things from another's perspective. And this time it was a murder. He wondered how many scenes and sights he would get to see in his life. It was the driving force that pushed him forward. He played the role of a witness, stating that he had been allured and wondering how he could resist it before jumping through the window. Kim Ryujin remarked that it smelled unexpectedly pleasant for a dead person, calling it unnecessarily nice and exclaiming that it was nonsense. He noticed a basement leading downward, and upon reaching it, he saw someone lying unconscious on the ground. Then Kim Ryujin realized that man was alive. When he heard someone returning, he hid behind a sofa. The lady was wondering aloud what she should do since he was alive. Kim Ryujin was shocked when she added that he was a witness and they couldn't let him live. Kim Ryujin thought it would be a problem if he made a sound and tried to stop himself from shaking while holding his breath. She started killing that man right in front of Kim Ryujin, who was afraid of being caught. He cursed her in his mind while they were shooting the film. Hae-yeon silently listened while the onlookers were shocked by the huge gap in skills between them. They also mentioned that, on top of that, he was an unknown actor. Dong-chun wondered if this was a dream because Woo Jin's acting had improved even more. Hae-yeon agreed with him, saying that this would flip the scene at the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival, and that if they were to award others after seeing this, it would be obvious that they had been bribed. Others were surprised when Hae-yeon told them that they should do well. As the filming of Detective Agency continued, the promotions for Profiler Hanryang were rolling out like a waterfall. Profiler Hanryang's official YouTube account released the first teaser along with the first poster, revealing the drama's themes. Though it was only a short 30-second video focused mainly on script reading, the views weren't short at all. I will ask you in question, was it because of the growing anticipation, or was it thanks to the participation of two tycoons? Answer me in the comments to see who is the dumbest. And shortly after that, the shooting of the Detective Agency came to an end. As Dong-chun thanked everyone, Woo Jin felt relieved that it had finally ended. But somehow, it also felt strange, like a bittersweet feeling. Although it might just be a short film, it was still Woo Jin's first movie, first shooting, and first lead role. Everything was unfamiliar, and shooting was freaking exhausting, but he had fun. Even so, just a short film like that was so tough for him. He wondered how Profiler Hanryang would be, and he decided to increase his stamina. While Woo Jin was thinking that all of this was worth it, he received a call from Youngdae. He looked around, ensuring no one was seeing him, and picked up the call. Dong-chun told him that everyone was free at that moment and suggested they have a drink. Woo Jin refused, saying that they should enjoy themselves. Dong-chun called him a punk and asked if he was pretending to be busy and why he was suddenly acting so mysterious. Woo Jin was not pretending. He let out a sigh and said that he would explain later, thinking that they would see him on TV soon anyway, and that it was better to keep it a secret and then reveal it all at once, rather than lie when they met. Woo Jin was startled when he was suddenly called out by Dong-chun. He nervously wondered if he had heard that, and Woo Jin replied yes. He seemed really calm to Dong-chun, so Dong-chun asked him if he wasn't tired. He was relieved as he realized Dong-chun did not hear anything, and replied that it was manageable. Dong-chun had expected that he didn't lack anything as an actor for someone joining a mega project soon, and that it must be nothing for him. Woo Jin had finally forgotten about it, but Dong-chun reminded him of the fear once again. With the shooting wrapped up, Dong-chun decided to start working on the editing right away, and mentioned that he would contact Woo Jin before making an appointment. Dong-chun started explaining the muffled background noise in the cuts, and mentioned the post-production work on the audio, while Woo Jin did not understand a thing, and was just pretending to say alright. Woo Jin asked if the schedule for the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival had been released yet. Dong-chun explained that, according to rumors, it would take place in mid-April, so he hoped the post-production wouldn't take too long. Dong-chun told him that he must have a suit, and added that even if he already had one, he should spend some money and buy a new one. Woo Jin asked if there was a reason, thinking that he did have a cheap suit, but wondered if he really needed to get a new one. He added that, as the lead actor, Woo Jin should attend the festival too, and needed to look good in front of the incredible individuals from the film industry. He actually told him that something like that should be managed by his agency, and that he had received a lot of business cards at the script reading of Profiler Hanryang. Woo Jin wondered what was up with that Ajusi, thinking that he must be a prophet or something. Dong-chun told him that typically, an unknown rookie actor, they were often the ones who had to pay to get in. He explained that rookies usually sign contracts for 5 years, and that the quickest they typically started making money was after 3 years. Woo Jin was baffled when Dong-chun told him that he was already earning money through his acting, and that the scale of Profiler Hanryang was incredible too. At that moment, Woo Jin wondered how much he should set as the down payment. Dong-chun explained that all the entertainment companies were after him because they wouldn't have to spend the hundreds of millions of one they usually spent on rookies. But what was really scary was the uncertainty. Even if they were trained for 3 years, it was hard to even land a minor role. Horrified, Woo Jin thought that the entertainment industry was really scary. Dong-chun excitedly said that, despite everything, Woo Jin had landed a lead role and a supporting role back-to-back. Woo Jin was surprised when Dong-chun mentioned that he thought it would be okay for him to set the down payment at around 20 million won. Woo Jin was confused when Dong-chun started searching for something in his pocket. Dong-chun handed him the script for parts 3 and 4 of Profiler Hanryang, saying that Hyungnim had asked him to pass it on to him since he was busy filming. Woo Jin thanked him. Dong-chun left from there, telling him to be careful on his way home and that he would contact him later. Wu Jin wondered if he should start reading part 3 right away. Sometime later, Wu Jin was lying on his bed, feeling tired, and wondered how long it had been since he had experienced this much peace. He really wanted to sleep like that. He got up thinking that he had something he needed to think about, as a week had passed since he had received the business cards. There were 8 cards, and he decided to make a decision about picking a film company. As for the agencies, it was basic to check them out, but he wondered if he really had to meet all 8 of them, as that would be a bit too inconvenient and didn't really fit his concept or approach either. And from what he had seen during the script reading, everyone seemed to know each other. He wondered if a rumor would spread if he met with them. So, for him, moving around casually was out. He knew nothing about the entertainment industry, so searching for each of these companies was out of the question. It would only make things more hectic. In that case, he picked up a card, thinking he needed experience, and introduced himself on the phone. On the other side, Choi Sung was asking her if she had done well in the detective agency shooting. Ha-yeon replied that maybe she had. Choi Sung was confused, and Ha-yeon thought that watching Kang Woo-jin act and experiencing it with her own 2 eyes were different. She even felt intimidated in the middle of it. That was because when she was trying to sink in with his acting, she felt that her acting was lacking. Grabbing her head in frustration, she wondered how he did it, and if it was just pure talent. Even though Kim Ryujin and Manager Park had completely different tones, she wondered how he managed to keep a boundary between the two so clearly, and if he had multiple personalities. Choi Sung was confused, looking at Ha-yeon, who was wondering if it was even possible to learn something like that, and he had even studied it himself. Even so, she still wanted to see Kang Woo-jin's acting, because she wanted to get better at acting. To achieve that, she decided that she must bring him there, and asked her appa how much he had decided on Kang Woo-jin's down payment, and if he had received a call from him. Choi Sung asked why she was asking about that suddenly, and replied that he hadn't decided yet. Woo-jin was still deciding on his down payment. She told him to set it as high as possible, as they must secure him. Then suddenly, Choi Sung's phone started ringing. It was an unknown number. When Choi Sung picked it up, they were all shocked as they realized it was Woo-jin. Ha-yeon told him what he was doing and urged him to just talk to Woo-jin quickly. Choi Sung told Woo-jin that he had been waiting for his call. Woo-jin apologized, explaining that he had been busy with the shooting and wanted to meet him to discuss the down payment. It was already quite late, so Choi Sung decided to meet him somewhere near his house. However, Woo-jin disagreed, saying he would come to BW Entertainment. Sometime later, Choi Sung welcomed Woo-jin, saying it was a bit narrow, but for a startup, it was big, and added that it was all thanks to Hong Ha-yeon. As Woo-jin had expected, with a single top actor, it was even possible to maintain an entire company. However, Woo-jin asked why it was only Hong Ha-yeon. Choi Sung explained that he was focusing on Star Hong and was busy trying to build a foundation for the company. Then he asked if Woo-jin had met with other entertainment companies. He was the first, but Woo-jin couldn't say that, so Woo-jin replied that he had kind of met a few of them. Choi Sung said that it was hectic. Now, before they offered him a contract, Choi Sung thought it would be better to pinpoint the down payment first. He said that he was also prepared to match them and asked if Woo-jin had anything in mind. Woo-jin nervously thought he had won 20 million won, as told by Dong-chun. But Woo-jin wondered if this was really okay, and if Choi Sung would just reject it if he said 20 million won. Short and clear, Woo-jin decided to just say it calmly, thinking it was nothing big. But before he could say anything, Choi Sung interrupted him, asking what he thought of 30 million won. Our Woo-jin was completely confused. He quickly shut his mouth and almost said that 30 million won was surprising. Silent, Woo-jin became nervous when Choi Sung said, okay, and offered 40 million won, saying it was possible. Woo-jin, completely baffled, silently boxed the air. Woo-jin asked 40 million won? Choi Sung agreed, saying, it's possible. That was baffling, but there was no reason to refuse when Choi Sung was offering that much. He decided to continue the conversation naturally, as each second felt tricky for him. Woo-jin, curious, asked why Choi Sung had set such an amount. Choi Sung honestly told him that it was a trend to evade down payments nowadays. Even famous top actors received a house or other things instead of money. Woo-jin agreed, saying he roughly had an idea about that and thought he had heard about it recently. Choi Sung explained that down payments were rare for new actors, who typically started as trainees. However, Woo-jin was a special case, having 2 projects despite being an unknown actor. Still, he was considered ordinary by the public, and in the entertainment industry, recognition equaled money. Companies unfamiliar with him would question the down payment, but those who saw his potential would invest. Choi Sung praised Woo-jin's acting, but warned that the industry's uncertainty could affect his future. Choi Sung wondered what would happen if all the projects Woo-jin appeared and failed. Because of this uncertainty, no matter how good Woo-jin's acting was, they wouldn't offer more than 40 or 50 million won. Choi Sung slammed the contract down on the table. He explained that what was crucial was the payment ratio and the contract period. Woo-jin had learned something new again and replied that since he wouldn't take up the money, time, or training. Choi Sung agreed, saying that it was a big merit no matter the entertainment company. He mentioned that Woo-jin might not be pleased with any companies or conditions at that moment. but as he grew in popularity, he would realize the importance of an agency. Choi Sung suggested a payment ratio of 9-1, with them taking the 1. He added that the contract was just for 1 year. In short, he was offering Woo Jin a taste of their BW entertainment. He explained that Woo Jin could decide whether to extend the contract or not a year later. Internally, Woo Jin was shocked, thinking there must be some misunderstandings in this situation. He did not think anyone else could offer such good conditions. He needed experience, but a 9-1 ratio and a 1-year contract? Moreover, it was a bonus that it was Hong Hai-yun. Then Woo Jin asked to add 2 conditions. 1, no questions about his past, and 2, he would only work on the projects he wanted. Choi Sung roughly understood his circumstances, and regarding the second condition, he asked if Woo Jin was saying that even project recommendations would not be accepted. Woo Jin disagreed, saying that it was fine. Choi Sung thought that if it was for project choice, it was fine, and said that both conditions were acceptable and could be added to the contract. He then asked if that meant Woo Jin would like to sign a contract with them. Woo Jin agreed, saying that he would be in his care. Internally, Choi Sung was laughing like Lloyd Frontier and said that he was looking forward to working with Woo Jin too, referring to him as BW Entertainment's actor number 2. Choi Sung was amazed when Woo Jin handed him a business card, saying he had received it during the script reading and that it was from a film company, not an entertainment company. Choi Sung was shocked when he realized it was from Box Movie, and on top of that, it was the general manager Choi Daman. He was one of the legendary directors in the country. Choi Sung realized that his next project was with Box Movie. Choi Sung thought they were trying to get Woo Jin into the movie, but for now, he believed Woo Jin should meet with general manager Choi. Woo Jin didn't know this and asked him just in case, but it seemed Woo Jin had made a good choice. Meanwhile, Choi Sung was talking on the phone with them. As always, Woo Jin, with a poker face, was surprised when they told him they wanted to meet right then. Sometime later, they were in the Box Movie Film Company, both waiting. They were a bit late and had already been waiting for 30 minutes. Choi Sung wondered if General Manager Choi was throwing a fit because he couldn't contact Woo Jin. Then a man arrived, apologizing and saying that he had suddenly had something to take care of on the way there. Choi Sung thought he had always heard those words at the design company and believed he was lying. He told Woo Jin that they had finally gotten to meet and that he had been waiting for so long. With a poker face, Woo Jin replied that he had been busy with a shoot. Mockingly, the man asked if that was so, saying that it still took him so long. He had thought that a new actor who had just stepped into the industry was ignoring him. Woo Jin looked at him and thought it was clear that he was obviously upset, even in the way he talked. That man asked if they knew director Woo Hyun-gu. He had told everything about Woo Jin to the director and had almost gotten scolded since Woo Jin hadn't contacted him. First of all, the man told Woo Jin that if he wanted to join there, he would need to be auditioned. He showed him the scenario. While Woo Jin was checking the script, Choi Sung thought that if Woo Jin were to join a project of the legendary director Woo Hyun-gu, his influence would grow significantly. Choi Sung was annoyed. Meanwhile, that man mockingly said that he couldn't say anything regarding the money. Choi Sung whispered to Woo Jin, telling him that this was an opportunity he should accept, no matter what. Woo Jin asked if that was really the case. Choi Sung replied, of course, but Woo Jin then requested him to please refuse. At first, Choi Sung did not understand what Woo Jin was saying, but when he realized, he was completely confused. Choi Sung was completely baffled when Woo Jin again told him to please refuse the proposal. Choi Sung exclaimed that he would not. He was at a loss for words, thinking that he was totally being serious. Now, Choi Sung understood why Hai-yun had called him very special. He really was unpredictable. Choi Sung told him to calm down first, and mentioned that he had only read a few pages of the script. Woo Jin replied that he was calm. Panicked, Choi Sung said to be even calmer, and asked if he really wanted to blow this opportunity. With an indifferent face, Woo Jin agreed, saying that he wanted to blow it. There was no opening, and Woo Jin showed no signs of being persuaded. In that case, Choi Sung nervously thought that he should start by slowly covering it up with some good words. Choi Sung dryly laughed and called Manager Choi, saying that the script was amazing. Manager Choi said that it was a given and asked Choi Sung why he was saying it instead of him. When poor Woo Jin tried to say that he wanted to blow it, Choi Sung nudged him with his knee. Woo Jin wondered if he was being asked to go along with it. Showing Woo Jin a thumbs up, Choi Sung told Manager Choi that it was because he wanted to keep reading the script, and Manager Choi laughed. Manager Choi was a little hesitant. He said that just giving away the script might give the impression that they were favoring him too much. Choi Sung agreed, saying that if word got out, it could be troublesome. While talking with Manager Choi, Choi Sung was thinking that it would be strange to leave right after looking at the script, so he decided to stall for a few minutes with some small talk. He was angry, even though Kong Woo Jin was strange, and now he was part of BW Entertainment. Sometime later, Choi Sung said that then he would check the schedule and get back to them as soon as possible. Manager Choi asked if he had to wait again. Choi Sung replied that because there was a lot to prepare for profiler Hanriang, he would personally contact them and assured them not to worry. Manager Choi asked if he could get back to him quickly, adding that at this rate, he would really get scolded by the director. Scratching his head, Choi Sung replied that of course he could. Sometime later, they were outside. Woo Jin was confused as Choi Sung started looking around. Then, Choi Sung told Woo Jin to wait just a moment and loudly shouted in his ear, asking why on earth he wanted to reject it and insisting that there must be a reason. The reason was subspace. He had secretly gone into the subspace in the meeting room earlier to check the rating, and the project was graded F. He wondered what he should do and questioned whether it was supposed to be from a renowned legendary director. There were many possibilities. Still, he didn't know since he had just become an actor. He wondered if it would be better to stick with successful projects for now. He had heard that it was okay to fail as long as it had some artistic value, but that was only after it gained some recognition. Angry Choi Sung was looking at Woo Jin, but Woo Jin couldn't just say that it was an F-grade movie. Woo Jin decided to use the cheat code he had used before. Choi Sung was totally confused when Woo Jin said it was just a feeling, or rather, his intuition told him it was bad. Choi Sung asked if he was sick or something, and if he had a severe headache. With a poker face, Woo Jin replied that he was perfectly fine. Choi Sung's glasses cracked, and he almost cursed at him when Woo Jin requested to please decline the audition offer. He wondered if Woo Jin was truly a crazy genius who surpassed even Hong Hae-yun, or if it was just his impression, and if the guy was not only unpredictable but also a crazy lunatic. Sometime later, Woo Jin was at home tired. He started excitedly checking the script since they were on that topic and wondered if he should go into the subspace to practice. It had been a while since Woo Jin had read a script, and since it was from a legendary director, he decided to give it a try to see if he could figure out why it was rated as an F. Plus, there was still time until the first shoot. Woo Jin selected James and wondered if he was a foreigner and if it was his first time acting as a foreigner. Woo Jin was confused as the system detected a new language and began preparing to read English. Then a bright light started emanating from the subspace. Woo Jin slowly opened his eyes and found himself in a new gray space. He noticed something approaching him. It was an English letter. He shouted loudly as it was absorbed into his body. Woo Jin was completely shocked, seeing more words began floating around him, all of them coming towards him. He began screaming loudly throughout the subspace, and the reading of the new language English ended. Outside of the subspace, Woo Jin was clutching his head and wondering what that had been just now. The vivid sensation felt similar to when he read a script in the subspace. As Woo Jin was wondering what had happened to him, he realized that he had been speaking in English at that moment. Thinking the subspace was insane, his pronunciation became incredibly fluent, and the English just flowed out. Memorizing the lines was already impressive, but now it felt like a whole foreign language had been implanted into him. Woo Jin picked up his phone, wondering if this meant he could even go to Hollywood later. He then checked if he would be able to read the language. As expected, Woo Jin could read English right away too. Then he realized that with this subspace, he could learn languages other than English as well. He was glad he had read the script of that F-grade project, even though he couldn't figure out why it was rated F. But he seriously wondered, why was it rated F? On the other side, a girl was typing on a keyboard while on her call. Someone was saying that about a week ago, the director had mentioned he would drive her home, but instead, he took her to a motel. She was so scared that, as soon as she got out of the car, she ran away. The next day, she was kicked out of the director's team. Another girl asked her if she had any evidence or something. She agreed, saying she had started a recording when she got into the car, but even if she told others, no one would believe her. The other girl hung up the phone, telling her not to worry, that it was okay. She added that since he was such a big shot in the industry, she hadn't been able to confront him all this time. With that much evidence, she could upload it directly to YouTube. She wondered if he wasn't going to start a new project soon. It should be around next week, the downfall of director Woo Hyun-gu. The next day, Choi Sung called Woo Jin and told him to get into the car. Woo Jin requested Choi Sung to feel free to speak comfortably, as he thought it would be better to mention this in advance to make it easier for Choi Sung to speak formally. Choi Sung agreed and asked if it was necessary. As Woo Jin entered the car, Choi Sung asked if he had received the information about the first shoot of Profiler Hanryang, mentioning that Ryu Young-min and assistant manager Park would have the first cuts. Woo Jin paused when Choi Sung suggested that, since he wasn't the type to get nervous, he should just prepare thoroughly for the remaining 5 days. However, Woo Jin was actually very nervous. Choi Sung explained that they would go to a celebrity-exclusive shop for makeup, and then head over to create the profile. He wondered if they would take pictures of him in poses and all. He thought it might be similar to acting, though it felt a bit embarrassing. Choi Sung also told Woo Jin that he had expressed his intention to decline the audition with Box Movie, and of course, manager Choi Daman had made a fuss about it. Woo Jin had forgotten about that and thanked him. Choi Sung also said that he hadn't mentioned anything about how he felt. Since they had rejected the Box Movie, they probably wouldn't have a good impression of either of them. Woo Jin thought that their mindset was very narrow-minded, and he told Choi Sung saying they could have declined them after the audition. Choi Sung disagreed, saying that it was better not to start anything. Still, he mentioned that it was going to be difficult for them to get into a project with director Woo Hyun-gu in the future. Even so, Woo Jin thought that he couldn't act in an F-grade movie, but it was still a shame to decline such an offer. He decided to be a bit cool about it, and replied that it didn't matter. Choi Sung guessed that the labeled legendary director didn't really matter to him, and thought that Woo Jin was really strange. Choi Sung asked if there was anything else Woojin needed. Woojin answered that he needed a suit. Choi Sung asked why. It was because director Shin Dong-chun had told him to get one, but Woojin couldn't say that, so he decided to speak a bit arrogantly. Choi Sung was shocked when Woojin replied that he planned to wear it to the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival. Choi Sung wondered if Woojin really believed that the detective agency would make it to the finals. Choi Sung agreed. A suit was still necessary, so the company would take care of that. On that topic, Choi Sung decided to add a picture of Woojin in a suit to the profile too. Surprised, Woojin wondered if they just gave away luxury suits now. Choi Sung was confused when Woojin asked if it was possible to get a Japanese script. That was an unusual request, so Choi Sung asked why Woojin suddenly wanted a Japanese script. Woojin replied that it was nothing serious, and that he just wanted to take a look at it. Choi Sung seriously couldn't understand him. Hong Hae-yun was already a handful. He wondered why only crazy people seemed to gather around him. Looking at Woojin through a mirror, Choi Sung still thought that those crazy people were exceptionally talented. Some time later, everyone was amazed by his handsome looks, and Choi Sung had expected this reaction. With some makeup and a suit, Woojin looked completely alive, giving off the vibe of a totally top actor now. Then a girl called Choi Sung, asking how the picture of Woojin looked. When he looked at it, he thought it looked amazing. They decided to go with this one. As he continued talking about the BW website, his phone started ringing. It was Manhwa. He picked up the call, and they greeted each other. Manhwa asked if Woojin was settling in well at Bin Entertainment, and if he had met with any other directors. Choi Sung hoped that PD Song would keep the information to himself, and mentioned that he had received a call to join director Woo Hyun-goo's next project, which Woojin had declined. Manhwa asked about the reason. Choi Sung explained that after reading a few pages of the script, he had a bad feeling about it. Manhwa recalled the time when Woojin told him about his intuition, wondering if Woojin had activated his totem or something. It was still uncertain, as the results from profiler Han Riang and the detective agency were not out yet, and if director Woo Hyun-goo's script was truly that bad. Manhwa thought that if Woojin had joined, it would have caused an uproar, and he concluded that Woojin really was something. Manhwa said, "What can they even do since the actor says he won't do it?" Choi Sung agreed and thanked him for his consideration, then hung up the call. As Manhwa remarked that it was fun to watch that guy, an unknown number called him. He answered the call, introducing himself, but was surprised when the caller revealed himself as director Kwon Ki-taek, saying it had been a while. Manhwa wondered why one of the best directors in the entire country would suddenly contact him. Manhwa was confused when Kwon Ki-taek revealed that he had gotten PD Song's number, because he was curious about something. Ki-taek mentioned that he had heard Manhwa was preparing for a drama, and was wondering if it would be okay for him to secretly watch the first day of shooting. Ki-taek had a personality that felt satisfied only when he saw things in person, so he asked Manhwa for a favor. Manhwa thought that if it was someone of Ryu Youngmin's caliber, there shouldn't really be a need to confirm. Manhwa replied that he understood and would contact him soon with the exact date and time. Manhwa smiled, thinking that he was coming to watch, and that he couldn't ignore that peculiar monster. Director Gilju asked what PD Song had said. Ki-taek replied that PD Song had said it was fine and thanked Gilju for giving him his number. He also thanked Hyun-gu for making the next project easier to prepare. Then director Hyun-gu told them that it would be difficult to hold their positions like this for a while, as both Kwon Ki-taek and he would soon start their projects. So Gilju asked if he had held the auditions yet. Actually, Hyun-gu wanted to talk about the auditions and told them that, recently, he had an absurd experience. A nameless person had insulted his audition. Hyun-gu mentioned that the person really had some nerve and wondered who they even thought they were. At the very least, they should have come and spoken politely. Gilju agreed with him, asking what that unknown person's name was. Hyun-gu said that it was Kong Woo-jin and mentioned that he was just some guy preparing to become an actor. He added that if Kong Woo-jin ever showed up on their set, they should just turn him away. When Ki-taek said that there must have been a reason and personally believed that as long as an actor acted well, it was fine, Hyun-gu started shouting at him. From what Ki-taek could see, he said it looked like Hyun-gu was just lacking confidence. Angry, Hyun-gu asked Ki-taek if he didn't think he was being rude right now. Then Gilju's phone started ringing, and he told them to stop. Gilju was surprised by what he saw on his phone, and Ki-taek was also shocked when Gilju whispered something into his ear. Confused, Hyun-gu asked why they were whispering to each other. Hyun-gu was even more confused when Gilju laughed awkwardly and left, saying he had an urgent matter to attend to. Hyun-gu asked the silent Ki-taek what they were whispering about. He was again confused when Ki-taek told him he shouldn't be worrying about an unknown actor like Woo-jin right now. Ki-taek pushed his phone towards Hyun-gu, saying this was not the time to criticize others, as his own life was falling apart. Hyun-gu was shocked to see the breaking news about his ugly truth and the dirty deeds. He was petrified because the news had been exposed on YouTube. Ki-taek started leaving, saying he had committed a crime, so he must face the punishment, take care, and repent while doing so. As Ki-taek left, Hyun-gu tried to stop him, saying something must be wrong and he needed to investigate it. Then his phone continuously started ringing, and he was messed up. On the other side, the film crew was setting up and making preparations while checking the scenario. As Woo Jin walked out of the car, he was surprised when he saw the big building and wondered why it was the same as the logistics center. Woo Jin felt like farting, probably because he was suddenly nervous. As Ki-taek noticed him, he thought it looked like Woo Jin was surprised. He wondered if it was his first time coming to a large film site complex. Although Woo Jin looked like an actor on the outside, Ki-taek added that since it was his first time shooting, he was still a rookie. Manhwa saw Ki-taek, who said he was cute and hoped that he wouldn't make a mistake while acting because of nervousness. Manhwa was surprised, thinking that it seemed like something interesting would unfold soon. Manhwa approached Choi Sung, asking if he wasn't happy. He mentioned that Miss Ha-yeon and even Woo Jin were amazing actors, and that they had joined BW. Choi Sung asked what Manhwa was saying and mentioned that he would experience a hard time because both of them were not ordinary. He said he was especially looking forward to Woo Jin. Manhwa was also curious about how much he would grow. But confused, Manhwa asked if it really ended with Woo Jin rejecting director Woo Hyun-gu. Choi Sung agreed, saying that the reason for that was intuition. Manhwa chuckled, saying that he was quite looking forward to that aspect too. As he was talking with Choi Sung, Manhwa noticed that everyone was noisy. He was confused when a girl showed her phone, requesting that they please look at it. As she showed them the article that had just come out, it was no joke. They were both horrified as they saw it. Manhwa snatched her phone, shouting that director Woo Hyun-gu's disgusting dirty skills had been exposed by a 900k YouTuber, and asked if this was really director Woo Hyun-gu. They wondered what the hell was going on. Looking at its context, they realized it didn't look like it was just a rumor. But Choi Sung asked if it was really true, wondering if director Woo Hyun-gu would fall into doom. Manhwa told him to wait. In that case, they both nervously looked at Woo Jin, thinking that his intuition was like a totem. Horrified, Manhwa wondered if he had seen the future. Choi Sung also thought that Woo Jin might have been possessed by a spirit. They both were wondering just who the hell he was. Poor Woo Jin chuckled, thinking that, thanks to the fuss going on, his fart was silenced. Sometime later, Woo Jin saw the news and realized that was why it was grade F. So the director was trash. Woo Jin thought the views would be a total failure, but he didn't know it would be like this. Woo Jin got surprised when they asked if he had rejected it because he knew about it. Regarding director Woo Hyun-gu, they hoped he could explain it. Even Woo Jin found it ridiculous, thinking that it looked like his intuition was some sort of a prediction of the future. He nervously thought that it wasn't that big of a deal, and that he could even make up a lie. It was better for Woo Jin to answer like this, so he said it was just a coincidence. While Manhwa remained silent, Choi Sung replied that anyone could tell it was a coincidence, but the timing was too superb. Manhwa nervously thought that it was indeed unexplainable since the situation happened to match. The problem was his intuition that coincided with the situation. Moreover, he was ridiculously composed while the surroundings were fussing, as if something like this was nothing to him, as if such a mere affair was something that happened every day. Manhwa wondered if that kind of situation must be commonplace in that oddball's solitude and quiet past. Woo Jin was confused when Manhwa said it was totally just a totem. Manhwa then told Woo Jin to please note that half of today's schedule involved assistant manager Park. He added that the other lead and supporting roles would join starting tomorrow, so Woo Jin would only be shooting with Mr. Ryu Youngmin today. Indifferently, Woo Jin replied that it was alright. Looking around, Manhwa also added that Woo Jin could get his makeup and outfits done right away before starting the shooting. He then asked Choi Sung where his stylists were. Choi Sung replied that he was going to introduce them that day. Choi Sung called out to Soo-hwan and Ye-jung, asking them to come over. He then introduced the new members who would work for Woo Jin. Choi Sung explained that Jang Soo-hwan was a hairstylist and Han Ye-jung was the stylist. Soo-hwan said that since he was younger, Woo Jin could treat him comfortably. Ye-jung, who was also younger than Woo Jin, told him that she had seen Han-ryang's style and content, so she had already prepared the outfit. Woo Jin requested them to please take care of him, and Choi Sung encouraged everyone by saying, "Let's do our best." Ye-jung mentioned that she had already prepared assistant manager Park's outfit, so Manhwa decided to inspect it together with her, and she agreed. Before leaving, Manhwa told Woo Jin that an unexpected happy event might happen to him that day. He described it as being like a rattletrap leaving and a foreign car arriving. Woo Jin was confused, so Manhwa tried to explain again, saying that what he meant was there was a foreign car at the filming site. They all left, leaving poor Woo Jin still confused. Then Soo-hwan asked if the place wasn't too big, and if Woo Jin was alright. Soo-hwan admitted that he was nervous since it was his first time there. Woo Jin thought that maybe it was because of the detective agency's shoot that he wasn't nervous at the moment. Even so, he acknowledged that it wasn't like he was fully relaxed either. Indifferently, Woo Jin replied that he would be alright soon. Excitedly, Soo-hwan agreed, saying that he would secretly take a deep breath. Woo Jin wondered how the editing of Detective Agency was going. On the other side, someone was clicking on the mouse, and Dong Chun was telling the tired man to rewind the cut just now. The man was surprised when Dong Chun said that this wouldn't do, and that they should fix the previous cut after this one. It was already the third time they had edited it, and the man said that there wasn't much time left either. Dong Chun replied, saying no, the actors had shown such sincerity, and the director couldn't slack on the editing. The editor asked if Dong Chun would be satisfied like that, and if he got too greedy, it would backfire. But Dong Chun told him to do a bit more here. Dongchun was instructing him on how to edit the video, thinking that just a little more effort was needed. Even if it wasn't perfect, he added that it must be done properly because he didn't want to give Wu Jin the poor disgrace of a total flop with his editing. On the other side, in the subspace, the grade of the script B+ had changed to a grade A. On the other side, a man handed some papers to someone. It was Jung Hyuk, and they decided to go. Jung Hyuk walked out of his car, thinking that he didn't know if Assistant Manager Park would be outstanding or not, and that he didn't intend to be dominated that day. He had fallen behind last time, but his pride wouldn't allow that to happen today either. As Yu Jaihyung, he needed to constantly keep his emotions in check and keep an eye on Assistant Manager Park's role. He wanted to examine, understand, analyze, and dissect him. As he walked forward, he added in order to blur the line between reality and acting. Jung Hyuk was surprised to see Wu Jin standing before him. Jung Hyuk greeted Wu Jin, thinking that his ambience was unerringly heavy too that day, and Wu Jin was amazed by his stylish appearance. Indifferently, Wu Jin greeted him back. Jung Hyuk felt unpleasant for some reason, and wondered if he should be someone better for Wu Jin to treat him like a senior. Then a girl told him that the PD was asking for a rehearsal. Jung Hyuk started leaving from there, saying that he wouldn't be dominated today. Confused, Wu Jin wondered what that smoking hot man was talking about. Sometime later, in the shooting area, they were getting ready for shooting. Wu Jin had completely misunderstood it, mistaking it for something entirely different from the detective agency, and that was making him feel quite nauseous. Wu Jin looked at Ryu Young-min, who was sitting composed, and it was incredible. As Wu Jin had expected from a professional, he was merely imitating one at best. However, he accepted it since this was the reality. Even so, the acting felt genuine. Then a man called him, and that man set up the prop. The first scene of Profiler Hanriang that day was about the story following Assistant Manager Park's surrender. At the center of the case was Profiler Yu Jaihyung, who analyzed Assistant Manager Park's traces from his past to the present. The scene depicted the second meeting between Yu Jaihyung and Assistant Manager Park, which was why the handcuff was an obvious prop. While Wu Jin was sitting, Park was slowly walking towards him. When the filming crew shouted action, Park possessed him. Park asked him what he could help him with. Yu Jaihyung had expected he was fast. Jung Hyuk told him, "Let's have a talk first. About everything and nothing." Then Park asked if he had eaten breakfast. He wanted to eat a hamburger, like a shrimp hamburger. Yu Jaihyung said he had heard that Park had an older sister who committed suicide. Park replied that it was true, he had one, completing the sentence with a maniacal smile, saying, "An older sister." Nervous, Yu Jaihyung apologized, saying, "This is no longer small talk." He made a mistake. Park disagreed, saying the story of his older sister who committed suicide was just small talk. Rather than that, is his data in that file? Yu Jaihyung was not sure and said, "Maybe everything?" There was also a story about his older sister. Park asked if that story was helpful for him, and said he needed to figure him out so he could catch the real culprit. Yu Jaihyung exclaimed that Park was a psychopath. He explained that sociopaths usually emerge from their upbringing environment, so he looked into Park's life. His father had been addicted to gambling and alcohol, committing violence towards Park's mother, older sister, and him. Then, Park's older sister couldn't stand it and committed suicide. After that, Park's mother passed away in a car accident with his father. However, while investigating the case, something unusual had come up. Park's mother had died instantly inside the car, while his father had crawled out of the car before dying. But there was a small trace of resistance on him. The case was closed quickly due to lack of proof, but Yu Jaihyung still had lingering thoughts about it, as it seemed odd. Yu Jaihyung wondered if the son was the culprit, a psychopath from birth, and whether Park's father had been the one who awakened the pleasure of serial murder. Park replied that the works of his that were known to the public and imagined a knife pointing at a person. With a completely dark smile, he asked if Yu Jaihyung thought that was everything, and whether he had ever considered the possibility of there being an untold story too. Jung Hyuk was petrified by Wu Jin's acting. Manhwa was surprised, and Ki-taek, who couldn't believe it, thought that the actor was the rookie he had seen that morning. He also thought Ryu Young-min was doing his utmost to avoid being dominated by that, and that acting wasn't rookie level. Then, Ki-taek wondered who on earth he was and asked the person next to him what that guy's name was. Ki-taek was surprised when he replied, "Kong Wu Jin." He remembered Hyungu and realized Wu Jin was that rude, unknown actor. Ki-taek thought he was worth passing the audition. His acting was so amazing that there wouldn't be any need for him to audition. Ki-taek wondered if he didn't know whether that kid was tenacious or fearless. Ki-taek didn't know where he came from, but thanks to that, not only Ryu Young-min but the atmosphere of the filming site had also changed from how it usually was, and everyone was being spiteful towards Wu Jin. Then, Ki-taek realized that Rookie was doing the pillar role of this drama. Then a man whispered to Ki-taek, saying that since he had already checked everything, they should leave now because everyone had started to notice him. Ki-taek said, "What a shame," and that he wanted to watch it until the end. Ki-taek left from there, thinking, that boy's acting has the power to captivate attention. Ki-taek wondered, what has he been doing all this time for him to only appear now, though? Some time later, the shooting crew took a break for a moment, and everyone was complimenting the scenes and the acting of Young-min and Wu Jin. Wu Jin felt like he was dying, and might actually die for real. It was much more difficult than he had thought. Although he was prepared for it, it was completely different from the detective agency. As Jung-hyuk looked at Woo Jin, who was trembling, he thought, it'll work somehow. There's no way he'll die for real. But it's a little cold here. Woo Jin was confused when Jung-hyuk called Park, saying, it's not easy to recover from the emotions. Jung-hyuk mentioned that he had gotten cramps in his hands a while ago too. Woo Jin denied it and said it was just that he was a little cold. Jung-hyuk told him there was no need to hide it, explaining that emotional recovery was a process that came with time. Woo Jin was internally telling him that it was because he was cold and wondered why he wasn't believing him. Jung-hyuk was telling him that he knew it well and that he should just take it easy. Nervous Woo Jin thanked him for understanding him, while thinking that they wouldn't believe it if he confessed that he was doing concept acting. Then the next turn was Woo Jin's, and they requested that he get ready. He agreed, thinking that it had been really demanding. He mentioned that they hadn't stopped filming for several days now and felt as though he had become an acting robot. Annoyed Jung-hyuk was angry, saying that it wouldn't do, 7 NG cuts and 5 dialogue mistakes. Woo Jin wondered if he wasn't tired. Still, it was a good thing Woo Jin had a secret space break room. He thought that if it weren't for the break room, he would have died a long time ago. While Manhwa was watching Woo Jin, who was still thinking that it was a shame he couldn't sleep, he was glad that he could at least alleviate some of the fatigue. Manhwa thought if Woo Jin was actually looking better than he had expected and noted that with such an intense schedule, anyone would be exhausted, and Woo Jin's stamina was no joke. A phone call came as Manhwa was wondering if Woo Jin was really some inborn genius actor after all. Manhwa picked up the call, and the other person said that he hadn't had the chance to see him. Shocked, he realized it was director Kwon Ki-taek. Manhwa said that Ki-taek had something to do, and that it was okay. Manhwa asked if he had perhaps seen Ryu Young-min for a casting in his next project. Ki-taek agreed, saying that Young-min's acting had really improved, and the next project was still confidential. Then Manhwa asked what Ki-taek thought of Kong Woo Jin. Nervously, Ki-taek replied that he had been in his dreams ever since. He explained that the reason he called was also because of that kid and asked where Manhwa had found him. Manhwa had expected it and replied that it wasn't that he had found him, but rather it was as if he suddenly fell from the sky. Ki-taek was surprised by his reply, and Manhwa confirmed it. Ki-taek asked if Manhwa didn't mind and inquired if he could share some information about that kid. Manhwa honestly told him that he didn't know much either, and that he was quite a mysterious guy. Above all, Woo Jin claimed that he had learned acting on his own without anyone's help. Manhwa also mentioned that if Ki-taek investigated a bit, he would find out that Woo Jin had absolutely no connections in the domestic acting scene. It was almost certain that he had learned acting on his own. Thanks to director Song, the misunderstandings were piling up. Woo Jin's ears were tingling a bit, and he thought that someone must be talking about him. Then, Choi Song called Woo Jin and told him to wait a minute. Choi Song gave him a script, and Woo Jin thanked him but asked what it was. Choi Song asked if Woo Jin didn't remember, and said that he had asked him to find a Japanese script. Woo Jin remembered now, and thanked him for finding it. Internally chuckling, he thought that he had acquired a Japanese script now, and all he had to do was learn Japanese just as he had done with English. Choi Song said that it took a bit to get the original Japanese script instead of the translated version, and asked if that was enough. Woo Jin agreed, thanking him. Thinking it must have been difficult, Woo Jin asked how he had obtained the Japanese script. Choi Song replied that he just happened to have some connections in Japan. More importantly, he wondered why Woo Jin had suddenly asked him to get a Japanese script. Choi Song couldn't even ask due to the contract, and wondered if it could be that Woo Jin had a connection to Japan in the past. Choi Song became nervous when he thought that maybe Woo Jin was aiming for a Japanese debut and wanting to take a look at it for that reason. That was a good option, but English would be the most preferable language. He wondered if Woo Jin was not able to communicate in English. Woo Jin silently opened the subspace and decided to go with Japanese. He pressed his finger on the script, and the subspace began reading Japanese. Woo Jin was finally able to speak Japanese. Then, he exited the subspace, slowly opening his eyes in the real world. Now, he had also learned Japanese. Then, Choi Song's phone started ringing, and he picked it up, introducing himself. Woo Jin was confused as Choi Song began speaking on his phone, saying that he understood. He mentioned that Ha-yeon's schedule might be tight with the filming, but Woo Jin should be good to go. He added that he would make sure to ask Woo Jin if he was up for it. He told Woo Jin that the editing for Detective Agency was finished, so they were inviting them to watch a test screening. Woo Jin nervously smiled, thinking it was finally the time. Some time later, as Woo Jin was walking forward with Choi Song, he couldn't believe he was going to watch a movie he was participating in, and Woo Jin was a little nervous. Then Dongchun noticed them and asked if they were here. Choi Song congratulated the director, saying he was so happy for him. Dongchun disagreed, saying it was all thanks to him, the investor. Then, he asked Woo Jin why his face was so pale. As Dongchun had expected, the shoot was tough, and director Song was famous for being strict. Looking at Dongchun's shabby appearance, Woo Jin didn't think this was the time to worry about him, and wondered if he had been stranded on an island or something. Woo Jin asked him if he was okay. Dongchun replied that he was fine and just hadn't been able to sleep or eat for a few days. He mentioned that this was just a usual occurrence for him. Dongchun said that they should discuss the details later, suggested they take a look first, and told them to sit over there. Dong-chun felt a bit nervous and hoped they would enjoy it. Then, he turned on the switch. Woo-jin was really freaking nervous because he was about to watch his movie. Even though it was just a short film, it was his first leading role and first work. Then it started, and Woo-jin was curious to see what it would look like when it came out. As Woo-jin watched the movie, he felt super embarrassed and wanted to run away. The running time of detective agency movie was 44 minutes. Throughout the viewing, he felt a mix of awkwardness and embarrassment, but the completed detective agency was very similar to the experience of a different dimension, making him continuously immerse himself in it. It felt to Woo-jin as if he were watching his own life on screen. Then, Dong-chun turned off the switch and asked Woo-jin how it was. He replied that it was phenomenal. As Dong-chun was admiring him, Woo-jin was crying in shame, thinking that he didn't expect them to use the scene where he fell down just like that and that they should have deleted it. Dong-chun told him that the Maisen Scene Short Film Festival had changed its sponsor starting this year, so the atmosphere had changed a bit. He added that perhaps because the sponsor was providing more support, the scale was growing compared to last year. Thanks to that, an award for actors had been added starting this year. There were 2 awards, one for best performance and one for the grand prize. Dong-chun clenched his fist in determination, saying that there were big changes, but that was fine, and detective agency would definitely catch people's attention wherever it went. When Kong Woo-jin was focused on detective agency, a silent war was being prepared in the broadcasting industry. It was said that profiler Hanriang was in the check, and MBS and TVM were scheduled to overlap with each other. It was unsure if it was intentional or if it just happened to overlap, but the promotion war between Silver Married, couple profiler Hanriang, and Carry That and Fly It broadcasts had grown fierce. Even the media started to report on the war, saying that SBC, MBS, and TVM were releasing a new drama at the same time, and who would be the one smiling in May? However, thanks to that, the drama scene became a hot topic once again. On the other side, as preparations were being made, Jung Hyuk and Haeyeon were getting ready for the shooting. Choi Sung was looking around, and Woo-jin was bored, wondering when they would start. Choi Sung said that the older man looked familiar. Woo-jin asked who he had seen. Choi Sung explained that there was a handsome older man he had seen somewhere before. He added that it was not strange for the man to be wearing a mask since some staff wore them too, but the man seemed familiar to him. As Choi Sung contemplated whether he should approach the older man, he noticed Manwoo engaged in an argument with someone. Manwoo explained that the scene shouldn't feel overly like a fairy tale, but should instead convey the essence of hell in a fairy tale-like manner. Observing this, Woo-jin wondered if there was a serious issue. Manwoo, letting out a long sigh, remarked that in order to accurately portray Assistant Manager Park's mentality, the VFX team needed to fully grasp the concept, which was proving to be challenging. That man was speaking in English, asking if it was as though the ordinary city was changing colors. Woo-jin, who could hear everything clearly and understood what was being said, felt that the message was being conveyed incorrectly. He wondered whether he should intervene. Choi Sung looked confused when Woo-jin stood up, but Woo-jin reasoned that he would have to use English eventually, so starting early wouldn't make much of a difference. Manwoo was explaining these ideas to the man, who was speaking English and saying that the background didn't matter. At that moment, Woo-jin joined in and, while speaking in English, said he could represent the bright tone of the fairy tale book in a darker and more mysterious way. The two of them watched as Woo-jin went on, suggesting that the ground should be purple, the trees or grass dark blue, the sky black, and each person in different colors. He stressed that grotesqueness was a key element. Woo-jin wondered why no one was responding and speculated if it was because the man didn't know who he was. He then introduced himself as the actor who would be playing that role. Internally, he chuckled at the thought that he had just spoken with a foreigner. That man nervously asked what about the part where the firework explodes. Woo-jin explained that the cruelty would be portrayed like a fairy tale and imagined a child witnessing blood spurting. That man understood, saying that he needed to emphasize that childlike grotesqueness. That man thanked Woo-jin for helping him a lot with the image. Woo-jin replied that it was no problem, while thinking that he didn't know the day would come when he wouldn't be chatting with a foreigner. Everyone was surprised, wondering why Woo-jin was so good at English. They thought that it was not a level they could reach by just studying and wondered if Woo-jin had lived in the United States. Manwoo thought that he knew it. Woo-jin was definitely from overseas. His pronunciation was at the level of a Korean American, and it was even further. Ki-taek silently stood behind Choi Sung, who was wondering if Woo-jin had really come from an English-speaking country and why Woo-jin would be hiding that. Then, Choi Sung recalled the conversation about Japanese and thought that he hoped Woo-jin didn't know both languages. Ki-taek thought that PD Song was right. Woo-jin was from overseas. The more Ki-taek got to know him, the more odd he seemed to be. As Woo-jin was internally wondering where he should use Japanese, a girl behind him called him. Someone placed their hand on her shoulder while she asked Woo-jin if he lived in the United States and mentioned that his English was very nice. She was surprised when it was Manwoo who told her that everyone has their own circumstances they can't share, and she should take the hint. Nervously, she agreed, wondering if she shouldn't have asked. He told them to be quiet and that everyone should stand by and start the shooting. She agreed, guessing she shouldn't have asked that. Today was the scene of on-site inspections about Assistant Manager Park's serial murders. Assistant Manager Park would reenact the murder while being handcuffed, and a teddy bear was used because the scene was too brutal. At the same time, the moment of the murder would be shown to the viewers through Assistant Manager Park's flashbacks. In short, Kong Woo-jin had to act in both the murder reenactment scene and the actual murder scene, portraying both the current Assistant Manager Park and his past self. Woo-jin was worried because it felt a little uncomfortable, as it was an unpleasant scene. Though he had already made up his mind, now that it was happening, it felt a bit different. Even though it was a subspace world, he was experiencing murder. He knew he wouldn't be able to experience only good things from now on. While the subspace was wonderful, on the other hand, it could also be hellish to the extent that his ego was swayed. However, the concept acting and the misunderstanding that started accidentally emphasized his ego clearly rather than the role. Thanks to that, it kept him looking back at himself. Manhwa asked Woo-jin if he was ready. Grabbing the rope in his hands, Woo-jin was thinking about the things he had experienced. Suddenly, they shouted action. Woo-jin completed his sentence, stating that they were just parts of his possessions. In the scene, everyone was cursing at him, telling him to die and give him the death penalty. Park smiled, saying that it was so crude, and wrapped the rope around the teddy bear's neck. He tightly grabbed the rope near his shoulder and walked towards Yun-hee and Yoo Jae-hyung. Then the scene changed, and a woman and a man were lying unconscious before him. The scene shifted again as the teddy bear slowly started blending into a woman, who was begging him to spare her. Park replied that he didn't know and added that he was sure she was going to die today. Park threw her down on the ground, and she begged him to stop. He started pulling the rope around her neck as she screamed loudly in pain. While dragging her away, she began coughing and struggled to breathe. He called out to her, saying that she should do more and that he would like the screaming to be a little louder, as it was not arousing enough. Woo-jin looked at her as she started pulling the rope and trembled. He came back from his subspace, realizing she wasn't acting. The shooter shouted, "Cut," and said, "Okay, this scene should do the work for now." Helping the old woman, Woo-jin apologized to her, asking how she was feeling and if she had any aches. She said that she was all right. Just in case, he asked her to let him take a closer look. She was confused, thinking that the character's aura surrounding him had immediately vanished and that he was completely different from the madman he had been just a moment ago. She was looking at his hand, and Woo-jin apologized, saying that the area around her neck had become slightly red. She replied that it was okay and pointed out that his hands were even redder than her neck. She added that he had intentionally put a lot of pressure to express the tension of the rope, and thanks to that, the rope around her neck was loose. But just to be safe, Woo-jin called the director, requesting him to please check this person's neck area and arms. Manhwa, surprised, asked if she had gotten hurt. Woo-jin explained that he thought he might have been a bit too rough during that pulling shot earlier, then told him he would quickly go to the restroom and be right back. They watched him as Woo-jin nervously ran away because he wanted to pee, and it was very urgent. As Choi Sung was watching Woo-jin leave, others thought that he was going to collect himself and regain his composure. Someone tapped his shoulder while he was wondering if Woo-jin was really okay, and he looked back. It was President Choi asking if he remembered him. Surprised, Choi Sung asked if he wasn't the director from Yulrim Film Company. He had heard that he was preparing his next project with director Kwon Ki-taek. Impressed, Choi exclaimed that they hadn't even done any press releases yet, but his information network was still on point. As Choi Sung asked, "But what brings you here?" he noticed that the masked person with a friendly vibe from earlier was director Kwon. Choi Sung whispered to Ki-taek, saying, "It's been a while," and asked if he perhaps came to see that actor. Ki-taek agreed, saying, "He's still quick on the uptake." In that case, Choi Sung asked if he must have seen Woo-jin. Kwon Ki-taek replied that he was amazing and had heard that he even speaks English quite well. According to director Song, Kwon Ki-taek asked if he was from abroad and if Choi Sung happened to know where he studied acting on his own. Surprised, Choi Sung asked if today wasn't his first time seeing Woo-jin. Kwon Ki-taek agreed, saying that he had been watching him for a few weeks and that he was actually planning to meet him properly and talk today. However, he mentioned that it would feel a bit awkward to say something to someone with strong lingering emotions from the shoot just now, so he thought he would just leave for today. Shocked, Choi Sung said that he had come all the way here and asked if Kwon Ki-taek was really saying he was leaving. Kwon Ki-taek replied that it was okay, as he had seen enough of the acting for what it was worth. Instead, he suggested that they arrange a proper meeting at a more suitable place. Choi Sung wondered if Kong Woo-jin was some kind of director magnet. He then suggested to Kwon Ki-taek that they meet in 2 days and asked if the morning would be all right. Sometime later, Choi Sung and Woo-jin were walking together. Choi Sung began to say something to Woo-jin but stopped. Woo-jin, confused, looked at him, while Choi Sung cursed the damn contract clause. He wished he could tell Woo-jin to really think it through this time, but for some reason, he just couldn't bring himself to say it. Choi Sung tried to explain that director Kwon Ki-taek's reputation is better and his honor is better than director Woo Hyunga's. Woo-jin agreed, saying he understood. Woo-jin had done some research on him before coming here. It was true that he was a genius. In fact, he had even won awards at prestigious film festivals abroad. But for some reason, Woo-jin didn't feel real, so he was not that nervous. Looking at Woo-jin, somehow Choi Sung felt like he was the only one who was nervous there. Anyway, they decided to go in. Ki-taek welcomed them both, and Woo-jin and Choi Sung greeted him back. Ki-taek said to Kang Woo-jin that he finally got to see him up close like this. As Woo-jin was sitting down, Kwon Ki-taek handed him the script for his next project. Kwon Ki-taek told him that a few other actors had already received it, suggested he skim through it briefly, and then they would discuss it. Woo-jin agreed and secretly opened his subspace. While in the subspace, he checked the script and its rating. He was confused to see its grade was a D, and wondered why the rating was so bad. He realized that it was the draft script he had seen earlier. If that draft was just a few pages taken from the original script and of low quality, he wondered if this meant the full script was also unfinished. He thought there was no way casting would happen with an unfinished script. Woo-jin wasn't sure, but although Kwon Ki-taek was a remarkable director, producing such a low-grade, poor-quality script made him rethink things. The roles were lieutenant, sergeant, and private. He knew that if he started reading, he'd be thrown right into the middle of a battle. Suddenly, he felt scared and decided to exit the subspace. Woo-jin was trembling while holding the script, and Ki-taek asked if he was okay. Woo-jin replied that he was fine. Ki-taek was glad to hear that, and had noticed he paused for a moment after receiving the script. Ki-taek wondered if he didn't like it from the beginning. Nervous, Woo-jin thought that's actually true though. Since Ki-taek came all the way here himself, Woo-jin thought he should show some respect. Still, he wondered why the rating was so bad, and if he could figure it out by reading it a bit. Kwon Ki-taek suggested that they should just skim through the script to get a sense of the project. He said they would only check if the overall atmosphere suited their taste or not. Sometime later, the more Woo-jin looked at it, the more he couldn't understand why the rating was so low. He didn't see any specific issues, so he couldn't make sense of it. Woo-jin sighed, wondering what he could possibly know from just looking at it. Unsure, he decided he would just ask about it. Then he apologized to the director. Ki-taek was caught off guard when Woo-jin asked if the script was definitely the next project. Ki-taek wondered why Woo-jin was inquiring about it. Woo-jin explained that he was a bit puzzled, as it felt complete but also as if it was only complete on the surface. Ki-taek remained confused and Woo-jin apologized, mentioning that he had told him to speak comfortably, so he did. Woo-jin was confused when Ki-taek said he came to that conclusion after just looking at a dozen or so pages of the script. Woo-jin wondered if he had made a mistake with this. Then Ki-taek started laughing and was impressed, honestly saying that he had been a bit skeptical. But it seemed like what director Song had said was true. This made Woo-jin completely confused. Searching for something in his jacket, Ki-taek explained that he hadn't expected him to have such an instinct for spotting a project after just a dozen pages. It was a script that was still not yet complete. Kwon Ki-taek showed Woo-jin another script and suggested that they read it. He thought it was quite surprising, as they had initially planned to bring Woo-jin on board without an audition. However, he was curious about Woo-jin, so he decided to test him a little. He wondered how many scripts or screenplays Woo-jin had read while self-studying abroad, as it seemed impossible to develop such a keen sense otherwise. Kwon Ki-taek now understood what director Song had meant by the different kind of star quality. He hoped that Woo-jin would like the script and accept that lead role. Meanwhile, Woo-jin, in his subspace, was looking at the title of the script, The Island of Disappearance, which was graded A+. The role was for a sergeant with a dual personality. Confused, he wondered if the role was for a dual personality villain. On the other side, Woo-jin thought it seemed like some kind of monster or strange creature was appearing. He felt it was pretty intense, and now that he looked at it, it was definitely different from before. The suspense, in his opinion, was on another level. He also considered the split personality role and found it to be an interesting character, though he couldn't tell if it was good or bad. As Choi Sung drove, his phone started ringing. Choi Sung picked up the call, and it turned out to be director Shin. Woo-jin was surprised when Dong Chun informed him that Detective Agency was selected as one of the 40 works to reach the finals and would then appear at the Maisensin Short Film Festival. Feeling excited, Woo-jin wondered if he would be going to those film festivals often shown on TV. Choi Sung asked if the finalists had already been selected and whether there were fewer entries this time. However, according to Dong Chun's information from the committee, that was not the case, as the entries had actually increased by about 30% compared to last year. He explained it was probably because Hae-yeon was involved. Choi Sung remarked that regardless of the quality, the committee likely reached out to entries expected to generate buzz among the audience. He decided to prepare everything for them accordingly. Choi Sung thought that debuting at a film festival just 2 months after appearing was insane and unprecedented. Moreover, even renowned directors in the country were drawn to it. On top of that, Woo-jin was excellent at English, though Choi Sung was still unsure about his Japanese. He felt this made the outrageous contract terms justifiable. Choi Sung wondered how things would proceed from that point onward. Choi Sung asked Woo-jin what he thought about The Island of Disappearance. Woo-jin replied that he hadn't finished reading it yet, but found it interesting so far. Choi Sung advised him to finish reading it and decide whether he wanted to continue with it. Choi Sung mentioned that director Kwon Ki-taek was currently occupied with the Maisensin Film Festival, so they would plan a meeting after the festival concluded. Choi Sung was surprised when, all of a sudden, Woo-jin asked if he could get more scripts and scenarios, preferably for something still in the planning stages. It wasn't a difficult request for Choi Sung, but he asked Wu Jin which genres he preferred, such as thriller, action, rom-com, or others. Wu Jin responded that it didn't really matter as long as he could look through them. Dong Chun told him that he had been playing intense characters early in his career, but if he continued in that direction, he might get typecast. He added that the best way to gain a fanbase was through sweet and charming characters. He told Wu Jin that his facial features were versatile and asked if he was interested in rom-coms or melodramas. Sometime later, the shooter shouted, "Cut." Manhwa turned to Wu Jin and remarked that he had been exceptional in the last shoot. Manhwa added that, in his entire career as a director, the portrayal of Assistant Manager Park that Wu Jin had delivered was the absolute best he had ever seen. Everyone started cheering for his hard work. Wu Jin felt like he had become a god of acting or something. He wondered how he should wrap it up, but he didn't know. He decided to just express his gratitude straightforwardly. Wu Jin bowed his head and thanked everyone, saying he had learned a lot. Jung Hyuk and Manhwa happily looked at him. Choi Sung told Wu Jin that he had worked hard and mentioned that he needed to have a brief conversation with the production team. He requested Wu Jin to wait in the car. Wu Jin agreed, saying he would be taking his leave then, though he felt there was something strange about the situation. It felt to him like being discharged from the military, leaving his comrades in arms with whom he had shared hardships. He found it a bit emotional and thought that he needed to get used to these little farewells. As Wu Jin walked, he still felt it was nice that it was over, or perhaps, he wondered, should he say he felt relieved? He guessed that was why the emotions he had been holding back felt like they were about to spill out. There was no one around, and Wu Jin began laughing uncontrollably. He said to himself that he didn't know about anyone else, but after all the hard work he had put into acting and maintaining the tough act, it should be okay to let it out. As he continued laughing, he was shocked to notice someone standing there, watching him. It was our beautiful waifu Hong Haiyun, and Wu Jin thought it was a disaster. He wondered what he should do. Wu Jin asked her how long she had been there. She replied that she had been there from the beginning and had been waiting in the car. As Haiyun grabbed his shoulder, Wu Jin worried that she had seen everything, which he thought was bad. She shouted at him, telling him to get a grip and that he couldn't act that way. Choi Sung arrived, confused, and asked why they were acting like that and what had happened. He wondered if they were fighting at that moment. Angrily, Haiyun told him that Wu Jin had been laughing by himself. She explained that he had been chuckling and talking to himself, which was unlike his usual self. They were telling the poor, confused Wu Jin to snap out of it, saying that he was not possessed by Assistant Manager Park and that he was not a psycho or a sociopath. Choi Sung asked if he should make an appointment with a psychiatrist. Nervously, Wu Jin wondered how he should handle this situation. Wu Jin denied it, saying that he was acting as a character from the Island of Disappearance. Haiyun also realized it when Choi Sung said it was director Kwon Ki-taek's next project. She asked Choi Sung why she hadn't heard anything about that. Choi Sung replied that Wu Jin had been verified and that it seemed the upcoming project was a huge foreign work. She realized that they were practicing right after finishing filming as Assistant Manager Park and asked because he had to join Director Kwon's project immediately. Wu Jin tried to explain that he wasn't really practicing and had just tried it out because he was bored. She asked what kind of character it was. Wu Jin told her that the character had a split personality and that he couldn't really say more than that. Our poor Wu Jin was caught off guard when Haiyun remarked that that was why his smile had been even more maniacal than Assistant Manager Park's. He explained that, even though it was a misunderstanding, he thanked them for their concern. Wu Jin thought that he really couldn't let his guard down from now on. Still, Choi Sung told Wu Jin that if he needed psychological support, he should just let him know. He also mentioned that, if the schedule allowed, Wu Jin could take a break and asked how about taking his first day off. It sounded good to Wu Jin, and he told Choi Sung that he wanted to go watch Detective Agency in the theater anyway. Choi Sung told Wu Jin that the opening ceremony of the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival was in 2 days, and that watching it on a large screen would be completely different from the test screening. Still, just in case, Choi Sung told him to cover his face. Wu Jin thought that if someone saw him at Detective Agency, they might recognize him. He didn't think anything unusual would happen. On the other side, Youngdae was holding his phone and reading the news about the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival. He mentioned that the Short Film Festival was getting a lot of media coverage this year. He decided to check the film festival schedule, excluding the closing ceremony and awards. Youngdae was trying to persuade someone to join him in attending the Short Film Festival that weekend. The person agreed, and Youngdae suggested they have a drink. The person then texted, asking if they should invite the others too, but wondered why Kong Wu Jin was so quiet and if he had gone missing. Now that Youngdae thought about it, he recalled that Wu Jin had told him he had been busy all this time. Youngdae DM'd him, but Wu Jin hadn't even read it. He thought that if Wu Jin was unemployed, he should have replied quickly. Then, Youngdae decided to gather everyone this weekend, except for Kong Wu Jin. A little while later, Youngdae was with his friends at the film festival. Wu Jin was also there, but he had his face covered with a mask. They walked past each other without noticing, both heading to the CCV cinema. In the theater, all the seats were full. Looking around, Wu Jin wondered if so many people had come, finding it truly impressive. More importantly, he was getting nervous just thinking about appearing on a big screen with the audience present. He thought about how he could see their reactions in real time. As Woo Jin tried to calm his heart, he noticed some people walking towards him. Their voices sounded familiar to him, and he was shocked when he recognized them. According to Woo Jin, it was none other than the hopeless trio. Lee Kyung-sung, the chubby one, Na Young-gu, who gave off the vibe of a charming and witty male entertainer, and the big guy Kim Dae-young. They sat down in the front seats, and Woo Jin was even more shocked when they began talking about him. They speculated that maybe he had a girlfriend, so he wasn't coming. Na Young-gu remarked that it seemed like the most probable case. Youngdae silenced them because the detective agency movie was starting. As Kim Dae-young asked for popcorn, Youngdae, shocked and trembling, pointed toward the screen where Woo Jin was shown. Their mouths dropped wide open in shock, as if a watermelon could easily fit inside. They were utterly confused and began asking each other what Kong Woo Jin was doing there. Kim Dae-young suggested they should first go out and either call Kong Woo Jin or talk to him. Youngdae denied the suggestion, saying they should watch the whole thing and then call him. It was crazy that Kong Woo Jin was over there, but Youngdae wondered why he was acting so well in the meantime. Then, Youngdae realized, after the super actor Kong Woo Jin suddenly asked for a scenario or a script, one of the scripts he gave him was Detective Agency. After that, Woo Jin had asked about various things related to short films, and then he suddenly became busy and stopped showing up. So Youngdae wondered if that meant he had taken a quick look at the scenario back then, auditioned, and got the lead role. Confused, Youngdae thought that a guy who had been designing his whole life suddenly became an actor overnight. Woo Jin was silently watching them, and thinking that those guys weren't they paying a bit too much attention? Originally, Woo Jin had been planning to tell them around the time the premiere episode of Profiler Hanryang was released. Given the situation, Woo Jin thought he should at least give them a rough explanation today. Even Woo Jin wouldn't have believed it if he were in their shoes. Woo Jin became confused when Youngdae shouted loudly in shock, because in the movie, Woo Jin was with Hong Hae-yeon. Everyone was surprised and began wondering why Hong Hae-yeon was in a short film. Poor Woo Jin now realized that no one knew Hong Hae-yeon would be appearing. After the movie ended, Woo Jin crouched under a tree, silently watching his friends. He was already crafting excuses in his mind, convinced one of them would work. But before he could make his move, his friends spotted him. Like characters straight out of Shin-chan, they pointed their fingers at him in unison and yelled at the top of their lungs, "Catch that bastard!" Poor Woo Jin was petrified in shock when he saw them, as they started chasing him like a wild boar and telling him to stop. They got tired and stopped, saying that if he stopped running, they would talk to him. Woo Jin asked why they were running after him. Youngdae shouted that, of course, they would chase him when he suddenly appeared in the movie rather than as a viewer. Woo Jin asked why they were looking at him, as if they wanted to kill him, and told them he would explain everything. Youngdae grabbed him in a headlock, telling him to explain it to them. First of all, Woo Jin agreed, saying he was the protagonist they had seen in the movie. Hearing it directly from him made it even more unbelievable. Youngdae asked why he had suddenly switched from being a designer to acting. Woo Jin explained that he had first realized his talent for acting during the super actor audition. After that, he became more interested in scripts and scenarios. He practiced a bit and then auditioned for Detective Agency, and the director had seen his abilities and asked him to join. Woo Jin was looking away when Youngdae asked if that even made sense, adding that it wasn't just talent. It was pure cheating. Woo Jin told them that he was really busy with filming. Youngdae asked if he was going to continue being an actor. Woo Jin agreed, saying he would, but asked them to keep the matter confidential. Youngdae then asked if he had decided on his next project. Woo Jin agreed, saying it was a drama and still confidential. Youngdae asked if it was for a major network and when filming would start. Woo Jin replied that the first episode was airing soon. Youngdae started to check it out. Kim Dae-young asked if he was close with Hong Hae-yeon. His friends gathered around him as he excitedly said he had Hong Hae-yeon's number. Youngdae thought that Detective Agency was pouring in attention because of Hong Hae-yeon's appearance, as expected. There were quite a few mentions of Kong Woo Jin as well, and his recognition was growing. Youngdae was curious about what kind of evaluation Detective Agency would receive at the Mise-en-Scene Film Festival. On the other side, some people were talking, saying that the quality of the artworks had significantly improved compared to last year. They found the actors' performances a bit disappointing. Speaking in Japanese, they asked a man how the director felt about it. He was the Japanese master director, Kyotaro Taniguchi, and he agreed with them. As the next movie, Detective Agency, began and they started watching it some time later, Taniguchi was shocked, wondering who that actor was. The actor behind the protagonist role was on a different level compared to the ones they had seen so far, and Taniguchi wondered if there were actors of that caliber in Korea who only appeared in short films. Others started asking who that actor was, noting that he even overshadowed Hong Hae-yeon's presence. They were surprised when a girl said she had never seen him in any theater plays either. They became more confused when a man said he was from overseas. It was Ki-taek saying that. A girl then asked if director Kwon was accurate about this actor. Ki-taek replied that he had just heard about it because of a slight connection. He mentioned that the actor was bound to be the first blue chip of Chungmuro that year and added that the upcoming closing awards ceremony was really something to look forward to. The much-anticipated day of the closing and awards ceremony of the Mise-en-Scene Short Film Festival finally arrived. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as actors stood before a sea of reporters, cameras flashing endlessly to capture every moment. Others were discussing whether Hong Hae-yun and Young were coming. One man trembled with anger as others said it might be better if they didn't show up, as Hong Hae-yun would overshadow him anyway. Gu Xian shouted that everything was about Hong Hae-yun, and Young's issues were always overshadowed because of her. Still, Young told him that if she showed up in person, things would change. He added that he had been seeing recent articles comparing her to him, and things might turn out differently. Gu Xian agreed, insisting he wouldn't be overshadowed by something like the detective agency. As they decided to leave, everyone noticed someone approaching, and reporters started snapping photos, announcing they had arrived. But it was only the detective agency team. Young and Gu Xian silently closed the car door. There were so many people, and Wu Jin was starting to feel nauseous. Hae-yun remarked that his reaction was completely blunt, and even though it was modest, it was still the Mise-en-Scene Film Festival. Wu Jin was taken aback by her words. The reporters began bombarding her with questions, politely asking if she could strike a pose for them. With a playful smile, she stepped closer to Wu Jin and struck a pose for the cameras. Hae-yun whispered to Wu Jin, telling him she knew he didn't like it, but he had to act friendly and just try to hold it together for a bit. Internally, he was crying, thinking, at least now he has something to brag about to the hopeless trio. A man near the hall gave them the signal and allowed them to enter right away. As they entered, the hall was packed with people. With everyone watching them, the manager requested they head to the center of the hall. Wu Jin sat down, feeling uncomfortable with all the eyes on him. As everyone had already taken their seats, the awards ceremony began. Sometime later, they started giving awards to the other actors. Then the next award was for the Best Actress. The announcer announced that the award would be presented by director Kwon Ki-taek, who walked onto the stage. Ki-taek then announced, the Best Actress award goes to Hong Hae-yun from Detective Agency. As she walked toward the stage, everyone was wondering, does that mean Park Young will win the Best Actor award? Ki-taek handed her the award and congratulated her. Hae-yun thanked him, then took the microphone to thank all the staff, actors, and director Shin Dong-chun, who she said was the mastermind behind the wonderful detective agency. She added one more thing and congratulated him in advance. Everyone was left wondering, who was that directed at? Wu Jin too was confused, thinking, why is she congratulating him? Choi Sung quickly congratulated them and apologized for being a bit late. The announcer then declared that the next award would be presented by director Kyotaro Taniguchi. Choi Sung, clearly surprised that Hae-yun had already received an award, turned to her. She nodded and replied, it's the Best Actress award. Choi Sung said he guessed it was time to prepare some PR, and that it looked a bit crowded in the front. As Wu Jin stood up, guessing he should make some room, he froze in shock when the announcer declared, Best Actor award goes to Kong Wu Jin from Detective Agency. He stood there completely bewildered as people around him murmured, who is he? Hae-yun said he got up even before they called his name. Also, Choi Sung added he liked that confidence of his. Poor Wu Jin was totally confused. As everyone was talking about him, saying an unknown pushing the top, and his expression is really cold though. Speaking in Japanese, Taniguchi congratulated Wu Jin, saying the work was truly amazing. They were both surprised as Wu Jin also spoke in Japanese, thanking the director and saying it's an honor that he thinks so highly of Detective Agency. As a girl asked him if he knew Japanese, Wu Jin realized he just responded in Japanese. He got a grip of himself and replied that he just knew a little. Taniguchi asked if he had lived in Japan by any chance, because that pronunciation couldn't be just from studying. Wu Jin thanked him for the compliment and replied that he only knew enough to communicate. Taniguchi was truly impressed by that level of Japanese. Poor Wu Jin was confused when Taniguchi asked him with such talent why he was only involved in short films. Ki-taek was completely shocked, and everyone was wondering if he was Japanese. They also mentioned that he spoke Korean well too. Hae-yun and Dong-chun were surprised, and Choi Sung was silently chuckling to himself. Choi Sung was intrigued but realized that Wu Jin could also speak Japanese. He wondered what kind of past Wu Jin had lived through. Then, Wu Jin noticed a man was showing some hand signs towards him. Taniguchi apologized, saying that he had interrupted the proceedings and requested Wu Jin to please go ahead and share his thoughts first. As Wu Jin approached the microphone, he was wondering what he should say and knew it needed to be as serious and polite as possible. He felt like lightning was striking right in front of him. Wu Jin decided to just say something appropriate and his thanks. Then Wu Jin thanked them, saying the tough times were long, but he had wonderful people around him. He told them he wouldn't make his remarks too long and that he would continue doing his best. As Wu Jin was walking away, the announcer said the next up was the grand prize for a work. As he got near his seat, Hae-yun and Dong-chun congratulated him, and he thanked them. Sitting in a corner, Wu Jin felt like his soul had left his body when Hae-yun asked which team they thought would win the grand prize. Dong-chun was shocked when Detective Agency won the grand prize for a work. Tears fell down from his eyes as they congratulated him. As the film festival was winding down, reporters were quickly putting out the news, and it didn't take long for Yunmi and Manwoo to see it. The hopeless trio caught wind of it too, and finally, Wu Jin's parents were left feeling a mix of confusion and surprise. They saw his text about winning an award for his performance, and just to make sure they believed him, he He sent a picture of the award along with it. This moment marked the start of him being recognized as the actor Kong Woo-jin.